So it was only about time before a multiverse weapon tier list was going to, I guess, manifest on the Tropical Channel. And I would say this had like a long time coming, but at the same time, it really didn't. I had more of a focus on completing multiverse, like, my save file, completing, like, all the ships, like, randomly, but, getting there eventually with all 200 of them at least. And with that, I did like some crew tier lists, cruiser tier lists, like the ones you get from the unique crew at the Paragon and blah blah blah. So I figured, well, if there's any kind of other informational tier list I could make besides just like some random video about defeating a certain boss, or maybe just compiling some information that could satisfy someone who wants to play this game, well, one way or another at least, it would probably be a weapon tier list. And well, I guess that's also what my community post also determined as a tier list or guide video I should make next would be the weapon one, a weapon tier list. So that's kind of where we are for today. We have 10 different tier lists to go through. I wouldn't say this is going to be like actually this surprisingly won't be a super long video. I would assume so. It could probably be on par with my ship tier list, like closer to 2 hours. But I wouldn't say it for certainty because some of these tier lists are undoubtedly like smaller than others. Like like the flak tier list, for example, right, versus the the energy ion tier list, right, and then just other kind of beams and a lot of stuff to talk about here. But more specifically, some of these tier lists, or some of these lists rather, the individual ones will be kind of ran through sooner than others. There'll be less to talk about for some groups, more to talk about for others, right? And yeah, that's kind of it. I haven't excluded obviously not like a bunch of weapons because it's just the general setting of multiverse. There isn't that much to exclude. But what I did remove or not include into this tier list would be the mine launchers, as well as just some like miscellaneous weapons, like stuff you'd only find in the Nexus, or something like super just not really relevant to the scene of multiverse, and I just decided not to include those. I guess like one example, well, besides the mine launchers, would be like crash laser beam and stuff, because like even if like that was some kind of like classification for like a generic weapon, I think we can all agree like the laser beam is like in its own right a full shield piercing glaive beam, but that's besides the point. That's kind of with that out of the way as well, those two points that this list doesn't include every single weapon. That's kind of all I got. Well, obviously besides the video itself. And yeah, so without further ado, I think we get straight into this. Alright, there's one more thing, and I guess I can just keep the music going in the meantime. The other thing is that these weapons across every tier list, no matter what tier list it's going to be, even if for the weapons that are shit or the weapons that are overpowered, they will be ranked based off their most optimal performance. So for example, it wouldn't really make sense to rank a payload in a setting where you don't have missiles to spare. And it also wouldn't really make sense to, like, say, rank a beam weapon, or, yeah, a beam weapon that doesn't deal a lot of damage, and at the same time, or simultaneously, you aren't able to really deal with shields that well, right? And obviously for beam weapons, the whole point is being able to breach shields, right? So, well, maybe not literally breach shields, but, attack when the enemy shields are down. So, with that next point out of the way, here's the ancient tier list, our first one. Tier list video is going to be in alphabetical order just because I don't really know how else I should really do it besides just left to right. So first up, we got Eradicator 1. It's a 2-power beam weapon, deals 2 hull damage, 2 system. I don't think it inflicts a stun from what I can remember, and it has 100% breach chance. It's more or less pretty much just the standard halberd with a little bit longer beam length, and it's 1 less power for the same, basically more or less the same amount of damage. The 100% breach chance is obviously pretty noticeable, given that it's a, well, besides the fact it's a beam that's 2 power for the equal amount of damage output, it's definitely really, really strong. Eradicate 1 can be found outside the ancient sectors. It can't be found in the recovery site, but it can be found in events like the Trapped Ruins, or, let me think of another one. Maybe, like, if you fight Haunts. I would bring up, like, the Mantis, like, the guild shop. What do you call it? I forgot the exact event name, but it's inside guild territory when you, like, pay 500 scrap to get 5 different weapons. That variable won't be accounted for any kind of weapon because, well, you can literally get any weapon from that event. So, more or less, the best ways to get Eradicator 1 is by just encountering it in the random Aether events that happen throughout a run, besides, obviously, the ancient sectors. So, overall, I would say this is definitely an easily A-tier weapon. It's just a halberd that costs 1 less power, and it's surprisingly, it's definitely not the most common Aether weapon, or the ancient weapon. I mean, that's pretty obvious if you look at this list, but I'm definitely not, what you call it, I'm definitely not disappointed to find a Eradicator 1 beam. Even if I'm not going to play it, it's still, like, a lot of these ancient weapons obviously sell for, like, a crap ton of scrap, or a shit ton of scrap, you know, excuse my language of not saying more swear words, but, I'm definitely, the bottom line, I'm definitely not, disappointed to play an Eradicator 1 beam. Play it, or just have it in general. Eradicator 2 beam is basically for all the beam type ancient weapons. Well, I guess excluding the pinpoints, they all follow the same suit where the equal power. The power that takes for the weapon takes is equal to the amount of room damage it does. So like Eradicator 2 for 3 power does 3 damage per room. Same thing, 100% breach chance, 3 power, 3 hull plus system damage for every room it crosses. It's got definitely a longer cooldown than, you know, well, Eradicator 1 would, obviously, but just in general for like how a beam weapon would operate, it's definitely got a noticeably longer cooldown. Nothing too crazy, but still, like, you know, a thing to noticeable variable. It's basically like, as I said before, for like Eradicator 1, it's more or less just a glaive beam that costs 1 less power. Damage output is obviously pretty good for a beam weapon. Well, like, every time you increase a beam weapon's damage by 1, not only is it going to pierce 1 more shield, but it's also going to just deal exponentially more damage across every room it hits. Maybe not exponentially is kind of the wrong word, because it also depends on its length, right? The Eradicator beam progression, it gets longer. It doesn't get faster, because beam speed doesn't really matter too much. As long as the beam weapon is able to fire within the time that the enemy shield layers are down, it doesn't really matter how fast it's firing, it's just the length, really. But even in that case, it still fires pretty fast as far as beams concerned. And yeah, it's definitely a really good weapon. You cannot find it outside the ancient sectors, also the recovery site. And even at that, I think it's pretty rare as far as ancient weaponry goes. I think it's like a rarity of 4. I can't remember the exact numbers on the ancient weapons, because you gotta remember that even for the most rare ancient weapons, the only way you can like actually like find them in, say, like a store, besides like something like a Sylvan trade, is inside the ancient sectors. And if they're inside the ancient sector, or if you are in the ancient sector rather, the only weapons you're gonna be finding are the ancient tech weapons. So keep that in mind as well. So overall, I would say this is probably like, I would say as well A tier. It probably would be, it's realistically like a high B tier, low A tier. So I think with that in mind, I'll just, it's definitely not an upgrade to like Eradicator 1. Like, sure, it does more damage, and if I'm inside the ancient sector, I'm probably more prone to using the Eradicator 2 over the Eradicator 1. But overall, it's still definitely good. I think I'll put it in the same tier, just because it's definitely not a direct upgrade, but it's not really a downgrade either. But I can't say the same thing for Eradicator 3, which is like it's one of the heaviest hitting weapons in the game for its power value, as well as just in general for being a beam weapon. But the amount of things you need for it to really work is like, just besides offense wise, right? Like, you know, it hits hard, but long ass cooldown. The only way you can find Eradicator 3 beam, the only way you can, is by going to the ancient sector, fighting the Dreadnought, and then if you care or not care about saving Sylvan, you can get a second one and for having a one-shot beam setup. which sounds good, right? Until we realize like the other items we have in this tier list, which can just contribute to an easier time killing the final bosses, the Royal Dreadnought and Vance, respectfully. So, and as I said before, it's also impossible to get outside the Ancient Sector, unlike the Eradicated 1, and as far as I know, Eradicated 2, it cannot be obtained besides the Ancient Sector, but in any case, it's definitely not a direct upgrade. It's just a heavier hitting beam, and the only time you're ever going to be able to play it is when you're committed to the full-on true ending, and at that point, you're not really that much better off using a big beam to deal damage. Granted, it's fun, and at that point of the run, it doesn't really matter what you run because you're going to win anyway. But this tier list is based off optimization, and we can't deny reality this by saying that Eradicator 3 is the best weapon because it hits heavy. Well, I mean, payloads hit heavy, and they don't exactly deal that much hull damage, right? So that's besides the point, though. Eradicator 3, though, I'm not saying it's a shit weapon. B tier in comparison to like whatever else is happening in this tier list, it's definitely pretty solid. That's what I can say for it. Payload, though, is, well, obviously if you're a tropical channel veteran, I mean, I don't even know if a veteran is like anything at this point. I mean, channels only existed for about like 3 or 4 years. Made multiverse content for about a year and a half now, which is like hardly anything. But if you've been around a while, that's the bottom line. If you've been around a while, you know how devastating the payload is across the scene of multiverse. It's probably a top 2 weapon, maybe top 3 instead. It contends with something like Heavy Kernel and just the regular missile weapons. With the best RNG you can get, you can find about 5 payloads inside the recovery site alone. You can find payloads in Trapped Ruins. You can find payloads in Sylvan Trades. You can find payloads in Haunts, if you fight Haunts. You can find payloads really commonly inside the Ancient Sectors. And yeah, it's even if it was like the rarest Aether weapon or Ancient weapon, it's probably would still easily be an S tier weapon just because of how absolutely fucking overpowered it is as a missile weapon that's dealing 3 times as much efficiency as it should have for its power value. Typically a bomb does like one power for about 2-ish system damage. Payload does 2 to 4, same ratio, until you realize that it's also dealing hull damage, causes a breach. Again, being a missile weapon that's reliable enough to help any kind of other offense. The 4 immediate system damage, which is like I mentioned before, but also the shortish cooldown. It's one of the fastest firing Aether weapons, or I keep saying Aether weapons, but I mean it is an Aether weapon, but this tier list is the Ancient weapon, so. As far as ancient weapons go, the payload is one of the fastest firing ones. The only thing that's faster is like Harbinger 1 and maybe Pacifier, which is definitely not on the scale of how powerful a regular payload is. So with that in mind, I think we can move on. There's not that much to talk about for payload. I hope payload gets nerfed somehow. It would make sense, right? But it's fine. We can just move on to the tier list. Havoc Geyser, I would put it A tier, but I think let's put it A tier. It's very good, I would say. It actually used to be one of my most underrated weapons. I used to think it was actually like a C tier or lower weapon, surprisingly enough. And I think I saw the error in my ways kind of quickly, but at the same time, it was I didn't really like when I used to do like when I actually grinded for like any kind of unlock or just completion of multiverse, I would always just kind of go for like even when I did crew killing, which is what the Havoc Geyser more or less does against crew that are vulnerable to some kind of hazard, being fire or breaches, doesn't matter which one, but either one. I didn't really like using the Havoc Geyser approach where it's like systematically kind of dealing damage to shit and whatever. I preferred doing just like boarding strats or maybe just not really anything to deal with like methodically tearing a ship apart using it. And I think I got a little confused at that time because it's like at that time I realized, okay, well, Havoc Geyser isn't really a weapon I like to play, therefore it's not a weapon that's good. which is, well, like, obviously a pretty faulty thing to think about, but in any case, it's definitely very powerful. It's 2 power, 1 shield pierce, 2 system damage, 100% breach, like 50 or 60% fire chance, inflict stuns, and it's kind of a fast-ish cooldown. Not faster than payload. It's actually probably the same as payload from what I remember. And I'm definitely not. It's a pretty rare weapon as well. You can get a guaranteed one inside the special capital by fighting the. I forgot what the ship is called. Like the fight. It's just a big spectral ship. It's inside a ruins beacon. You get that. You get a Havoc plus a drive hacker. You can also find the weapon inside the Spectral Wastelands, a 1 in 7 chance to defeat the ruins outside that are at empty beacons. Or, I mean, they aren't empty beacons; they're just white beacons. So, yeah, it's a pretty rare weapon. You can't buy it in ancient stores. You can find it across transports or in random drops, but you can't buy it. Well, in ancient stores. If you find it in a Sylvan store, that's pretty cool. But in the general setting, it's not really that common of a weapon to come across. Besides the one, obviously, the unique set that pretty much guarantees you the drop. Plasma is, I guess, not really. I'll put it B tier. It's just a pretty standard ion plus system damage weapon. It's pretty fast, and it obviously, because of the ion plus system damage, it's able to chain on itself. Just one plasma is. It's actually a pretty fast cooldown. Actually, wait. To correct myself from earlier, plasma does fire faster than payload, but in terms of effectiveness per volley, the payload can win a fight in one shot, and the plasma takes a few chains for it to. Well, it's not a chaining weapon, but it needs multiple volleys for that ion plus system damage to stack, right? It's got fire chance if it lands directly inside a room, and I don't use plasmas very often, and when I do, it's most of the time just because I already had some like ion sub or / drone sub that, you know, complemented me in my ion capabilities. Plus, in general, if my run is just overpowered already, the ion weapon doesn't really matter what I use at that point. So the plasma kind of puts its name in a good spot in terms of how it performs. That's kind of all there is to it. Decent weapon for sure. Again, like obviously, like the common theme across the ancient weapons is that you don't really find them that often outside the true ending. But plasma, it's okay to use if you have a projectile-based weapon system that needs to get through shields. Plasma 2, on the other hand, is just not really what I'm looking for in terms of ion damage. It's beginning to become like Plasma 2 becomes really expensive to play for 3 power, dedicated to just dealing 3 ion damage plus 2 system damage. Like, granted, that's not like something you should you can completely ignore, like, damage wise. Well, like, I guess havoc wise, right? But no pun intended. But I mean, I'm not really that impressed by it overall. As you'll see throughout like every tier list I'm about to do, the exponential I guess value of a weapon will definitely decrease for each power bar it's going to consume, right? From like 1 to 4, as it usually is. I mean, there's a few 5 power weapons, but that's besides the point. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, like going back to the first point I made, just dedicating 3 power just for 1 plasma 2 to deal, sure, again, it hits heavy for what it does, but like I don't really. Like, the efficiency of it compared to, like, how other ancient weapons perform, it's just not really that impressive. At least the plasma, the Royal Plasma 2 variant of it is, well, pretty interesting to use, but that's later in the tier list. Harbinger 1 is, like, I used to put it C tier in terms of ancient weaponry, but in terms of, like, overall, like, the way it applies itself in terms of use, it's definitely not bad. It does sell for like a lot of scrap, surprisingly. Even for ancient weapons, it sells for a lot, like 55 for each Harbinger. Harbinger is not a super rare weapon either, across the recovery site and just ancient sectors in general. Harbinger 1, though, specifically, is just a slightly better hull laser, too. 2 power, 3 shots, 80% breach chance, and that's kind of it. I think it's got the same cooldown as the Hull Laser 2 as well. So it's just an upgraded Hull Laser 2. The pre-nerf Harbinger was a different story, but obviously, you know, we're dealing with Multiverse 5.3, so, you know, we got a 2 power 3-shot laser, so, not overpowered, so, but still fine. Harbinger 2, on the other hand, is a very, very efficient weapon. For only 1 more power, it shoots 3 more shots, and only has like a 4 or 5 second longer reload, which is very noticeable for a projectile-based weapon system. It's not an incredibly rare weapon either. It's the easiest way you can find it is like in transports, obviously, and again, you know, there's only 1 transport, but you can find them inside the ancient stores. They aren't insanely rare, I should say. I've had a few runs before. I actually ran like 3 Harbinger 2s, and that was a pretty fun DPS setup. Well, you know, if I actually had fun playing it, like if I could actually win the game reasonably with it, it was fun to use. Harbinger 3 is, yeah, it's kind of sadly like one of the C tier weapons of this list. 4 power, 8 shots, long cooldown, and just not really that much more, not at all more efficient than what the Harbinger 2 and Harbinger 1 apply. You're basically more or less better off just running like 2 Harbinger 2s and then the Harbinger 1 versus just running 2 Harbinger 3s. I just said a bunch of numbers, but if you get what I'm saying, you get what I'm saying. It's just more efficient targeting and just damage-wise. You know, spreading out the system damage between cooldown and just being able to aim separate weapons. It's just a much better like application than just one big weapon that shoots a bunch of projectiles. It's just not really that much more interesting. Obviously, it's better than something like a Burst Laser 4 because it's, well, like literally hull busting plus the breaches. But overall, I'm not super impressed by it. That's all there is really to it. Like, I'm definitely not, like, it's more or less just the same thing as like the Plasma 2. It's like, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just I wouldn't really care to run it. And if I am going to run it, it doesn't really matter what I actually play at that point. I pretty much run the one. Wait, what the hell? What am I saying? Run the run. There we go. I keep tripping over the 2 words, one and run, but that's besides the point. C tier weapon. Onslaught is it really S tier? Yeah, I guess it is S tier. It's pretty effective. The Onslaught is the highest DPS weapon in the game, besides something silly like a Gatling gun, obviously. 2 power, shoots three mines, fast-moving mines that deal 2 hull damage each. Wait, not each mine itself, but you know. A shit ton of breaches. It can cause stuns. And a very short reload. It's like, what, less than 10 seconds? Wait, I think it is 10 seconds. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And funny enough, Onslaught can actually be found in quite a few ways. I think the 2 most common ways you're ever going to find it is based off the Obelisk Trapper and the Rock Mine Launcher store, which can sell, if you have a Rock Blue option before you enter the Mine Launcher at Primorium, you can say, hey, do you have anything better in the back of your storage? And he say, oh yeah, sure, here, you can buy an Onslaught for 85 scrap. So, yeah, that's pretty cool, I would say. I've had runs before where I have like 2, maybe even 3 Onslaughts at my disposal, which is like quite a lot of DPS to say the least. Not the most optimal setup, but obviously it's just like for winning, like in general, yeah, like Onslaught's pretty powerful. Carnage is, it's actually fallen down the list, surprisingly, in my few, like, months, I guess, year. My full playtime playing Multiverse. I used to think the Carnage was actually better than Payload, you know, silly tropical, but Carnage is just, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why I'm putting it A tier. It's a B tier weapon. It's just the shot spread, along with just, it doesn't really deal that much more, like, overall like damage compared to something you could use, like some other missile weapon. I've actually found myself like using a standard missile weapon from like, you know, like the regular scene of Multiverse, something like Hades or Hermes or maybe even Ares in some rare circumstance. But Carnage is just like, I don't know. I mean, you can find quite a few Carnages throughout your run. Obviously, you know, one in the Coalition Stronghold, Sylvan Trades, and then well, you know, Coalition ×2, right? And if you get lucky in your seed, but I don't know. It's just not really that impressive as like a missile weapon. It hits heavy for certainty. For I would say 2x2 rooms, the Carnage is like, yeah, it's like there's nothing scarier than like from the enemy's point of view than seeing a Carnage just be targeted into your shield system or even weapon system if it's a 4-tile room. It's definitely pretty spooky to see a Carnage be aimed like that. But that's besides the point. It's definitely not a tier weapon. I'm fine with using Carnage, but overall, I'll probably be better off using something that's pretty much always going to be dealing enough damage. Its DPS is certainly pretty good. Its reload is actually pretty fast, considering it's a big bulky gun that's more or less not really suited for a constant amount of unloads. But in any case, I'm fine with using a Carnage. So next up, we got Purifier, which is Purifier just being an ancient pinpoint weapon. Pretty powerful. 3 reactor power for a beam, 1 tile spaced beam that deals 4 hull damage plus is it 5 system damage if I'm remembering correctly. The ancient pinpoint weapons always deal more system damage than they deal hull damage, and that obviously that still translates to when it doesn't fully pierce shields, which is good to know. Fires very fast compared to the Eradicator beams or just the other ancient beams in general. Or even Aether beams, right? I'm definitely not upset with using it, especially against Vance. I'd rather run Purifiers than Eradicators, but yeah. In any case, though, it's still plenty good weapon, Purifier. I think the only consistently bad thing I would say is that you do obviously need a setup for geared more around the pinpoints being better used just as a weapon that can constantly deal that increased amount of system damage. 4 hull damage for a 1-tile room is just, well, not a 1-tile room, but the only way the pinpoint can deal damage is by shooting a single room. It can't deal like 4 and 4, right? It only does 4 in 1 room. So 4 damage for like something like an 18-19 second reload is not like super incredible in that regard, but obviously the point of the run when you have the Purifiers, you have training, you have weapon performance. The Purifier starts firing fast and faster, so at that point it's definitely not bad to use. I'm completely fine with using Purifiers. Purifier 2 is definitely more or less a downgrade. It's more expensive to play. Purifier 2 is actually able to pierce 4 shields because it does innately 6 hull damage, which equates to what, like 7 system damage. Problem is, the reload is like almost doubled. I mean, it's not literally a 40-second like reload, but it's really noticeable for what the Purifier 2 does. And it's just the same applications as Purifier 1, just that it's more more inefficient for what it does. I say more inefficient as if like the Purifier 1 is inefficient, but it's just like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to describe everything in full detail exactly why the Purifier 2 would be just somehow worse than Purifier 1, but it really just revolves around how consistently good is the weapon, along with just is it efficient for what its power cost is. You gotta keep in mind, Purifier 2 is a 4-power weapon that kind of needs support, while Purifier 1 does need support, but again, it's a 3-power weapon, and it's often at that point in the run you have enough to supplement it. And I guess you could say the same thing for Purifier 2, but like, you know, at the same time, just it's more expensive for more or less the same amount of performance, right? So that's all I gotta say for it. Pacifier is more or less just a meme weapon. It's just infinite stuns on the crew that can be stunned. 100% accuracy, goes through shield, all shields, assuming you have like hard light bypass, right, against the Zoltan shielded ships, or super shielded ships, rather. And, I don't know, it's just really a meme weapon. It doesn't really have any kind of relevant purpose besides infinitely stunning. I used to put it in F tier, just because it was literally like almost, it's almost a meme weapon in that regard, but and it's probably fine for it to be D tier. Like if you find a pacifier somehow, like cool, it sells for 45 scrap. So that's all you really need to know about the weapon. Royal. Now we're going to the royal weaponry of this ancient tier list. We got Royal Eradicator 3. It's got A tier for Royal Eradicator 3. 4 power. Same thing as Eradicator 3, except it does another system point of system damage. It fires, I think, 3 or 4 seconds sooner. It fires sooner than Eradicator 3. Slightly shorter beam length, but really not by much. Especially for another point of hull damage. As I've spoken about before, for every point of like increased hull damage that a beam weapon's gonna do, it's just becoming exponentially higher in DPS, while assuming it's not like a super slow firing weapon. And granted, the Eradicator beams don't fire super soon or super quickly, but if you're able to find the Royal Eradicator 3 along with a regular Eradicator 3, I just say congrats, because you've now found a sub that can one-shot Advanced Prime, at least on Hot Extreme. So with that in mind, yeah, it's a really powerful weapon. Only way you're gonna ever find it is by going to the Obelisk homeworlds and then finding that transport, and then the 1 in 6, 1 in 7 chance of getting it. But yeah, it's definitely fine. It's literally a direct upgrade. It's royal equipment, but yeah. Next we got the Royal Havocizer. Wait, no, we got the Royal Payload next. Do I really have to talk about a Royal Payload? I mean, I guess I can describe it. I can describe the Royal Payload a little bit. The Royal Payload is more or less just like that's kind of what I got for Royal Payload. So, in any case, we got the Royal Havocizer next. Okay. Anyways, Royal Havocizer. Would put it S tier. It might as well be S tier. It's a 1 power. Fires sooner than a regular Havocizer. Pierces another shield layer. 3 system damage. Did I say it fires sooner? I think I did, but it's a shorter reload for a beam weapon that doesn't really need much support. Because of the 2 shield piercing. Increased fire chance, which doesn't really matter too much because it's already breaching 100% of the time anyway. Slightly longer stun, and it's like an actual system annihilator from all like what do you call it, like a lack of a better word. Actually, like it's one of the royal weapons that, well, obviously it compares to like the royal payload, but yeah, I'm fine with using it. Next we got the Royal Plasma 2. And as I mentioned before, with how it performs compared to the regular Plasma 2, it does, 4 ion, 4 system damage, 100% fire chance, or extremely high fire chance maybe, and 1 less power so it's 2 reactive power to use, and it fires sooner. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a direct upgrade, like literally, it's just straight up better, so. Royal Harbinger 3, or just the Royal Harbinger, I guess you can call it. It fires an additional shot, requires 1 less power. It deals another point of system damage for each individual shot, which is important, like really important to know. For each laser shot, 9. So it's basically the weapon. It either does 18 hull damage if you use it for hull busting capabilities, or it does 18 system damage, right? Yeah, because 9 times 2 would be 18. If you count on your fingers, it'd be up to 18. So yeah, it's pretty powerful. Like even on the weapon setups where you aren't exactly caring that much about shield layers, if you have nothing better, surprisingly you have nothing better, the Royal Harbinger 3 is like really good. Oh, it's also got a faster reload. Forgot to mention that. Royal Carnage is just the same as the regular Carnage. It's literally for the enemy version of the Royal Carnage, it does another point of system damage, which would put it obviously like an A tier. But the player version of the Royal Carnage, I don't even know if this is intended or not, but the Royal Carnage for the player doesn't do anything different than the regular Carnage. It does fires instead and a higher stun, which I guess is kind of, in some circumstances, okay. But the only circumstance that the fires would ever really apply to is the Vance fight. So, I guess like if you have a setup that's already based off Carnage and you end up having the Royal Carnage, like I guess it's better than the regular Carnage for Vance specifically in the true ending, but everywhere else it's just, you know, the obelisks don't have oxygen, so fires are like actively worse than causing a bunch of breaches. Royal Purifier though is same thing as pretty much the Purifier 1. It's more or less the Purifier 2, except it costs 1 less power. The Purifier, Royal Purifier 1 and the Purifier 2 have the same damage output, 6 hull, 7 system. And I guess it's important to know that the Royal Purifier does shoot, it shoots 2 seconds slower than the regular Purifier 1, but it shoots like 9 or 10 seconds sooner than the Purifier 2, so that's important to note as well. And I'm certainly fine with using a Royal Purifier 1 in conjunction with a regular Purifier 1, despite it, you know, being a little like off balance, off sync in terms of like the pinpoint syncing out, like, you know, firing. But yeah, that's pretty easily like adjustable in terms of, well, if you're able to actually adjust it. So that's the first tier list done. We got, yeah, 36 minutes for first tier list is not super good pace, but I think we can get done with it soon. We can get the other tier list done sooner now that I know how to speak on most of these weapons. So in the first S tier we got Royal Payload, Onslaught, and Royal Havocizer. A tier we got Eradicator 1, Eradicator 2, Havocizer, Harbinger 1, Purifier 1, Royal Eradicator 3, Royal Harbinger 3, and then Royal Purifier. In B tier we have Eradicator 3, Plasma 1, Harbinger 1, Carnage, Purifier 2, Royal Plasma 2, and Royal Carnage. In C tier we got Plasma 2 and Harbinger 3, and then in D tier, which is arguably just a meme tier, is just Pacifier. So that's the Ancient Weapon tier list done. 1 out of 10. Next we got the Beam tier list. Beam weapons in general were pretty heavily nerfed in terms of how effective they are. I guess I can the two most noticeable points. You probably know this already, but the fact that hacking costs a fortune to properly use. Hacking bypass doesn't work anymore, so you get the hacking system to purchase it if you don't already have it, along with defense scrambler, and then along with just the fact that enemies in Multiverse are more prone to having a fuck ton of shield layers, which obviously is kind of exactly what counters the beam weapons, is the fact that enemies have shield layers. So with that in mind, let's get right into the beam weapons. First we've got Suari / the Adaptive Beam 1. Probably like C-ish, maybe even D tier. I'll put C tier just because it's definitely better than the Adaptive Beam Mark 2 or the, I don't know, it's called like, what's it, Kamirari, I think it is. The point of adaptive beams in general is just really just stupid. It's it's much more noticeable on Kamirari, but Suari, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's not like that much worse because it's still like a 2 power beam that deals like 1 hull damage. There's other beams in this tier list that are 2 power for 1 hull damage, so it's not that much worse in terms of like its efficiency in that. But I don't really care about adaptation in terms of damage. Especially for beam weapons. Most of the time these beam weapons are going to be used to just one-clip a ship, or basically just, maybe not like literally one-shot it, but more or less just end the fight with one beam swipe by like, you know, causing a bunch of widespread system damage, maybe just dealing heavy damage across multiple rooms, whatever the case may be. That's kind of exactly what the opposite of adaptive beams are designed to do. They need multiple volleys for it to eventually, I guess, end the fight sooner. But if you think about it for a few seconds, you don't really care if it changes the damages later. You want the damage to arrive when you need the damage to arrive. And in Multiverse, or just literally FTL, the first 2 volleys matter the most. The number 1 volley, the first volley to ever happen, obviously matters the most. But I would say the second volley is more or less kind of, if you basically have 2 volleys consecutively that are not really dealing any damage, and you're actually in an encounter where, like, yeah, you need to start dealing damage to enemy systems because they have like maybe tough weapons, they got boarding or some crazy shit happening. Adaptive beams actively stop you from winning the fight easier. Obviously, you know, if you're at that point in the run where like, oh, I can use adaptive beams to kill Sylvan, well, let's think about it realistically for a second. If you're at the point of the run where you can kill Sylvan with Adaptive Beam, you can kill Sylvan with a fucking Momus. Or a Lido if you cared. So, that's my counterpoint. Kamiari is, like, easily one of the worst beam weapons. Not the, like single-handedly the worst, but it's not very impressive. It's a 4-power halberd beam, and the whole point of the halberd beam, like I said before, is that you want to end the fight sooner than later. And the fact that, like, I guess the Kamiari scales 1 to 1 for each chain. It goes from 2 to 3 to 4, right? Each chain just increases the damage by 1. So, like, I guess, yeah, like, you know, in the circumstances where you want to treat every single fight as if it was a Sylvan fight, and you just, like, wait for the beam to just literally, like, 2-tap or 3-tap a ship, like, yeah, fair enough. I guess it works in that case, but, like, it's so expensive. If you find Kamiari in a store, you don't buy it. It's horrible. It's not good. It's just all there is to it. It's just like it's a 4-power halberd beam that's just bad at its job. That's just all there is to it. Plus, it sells for a lot of scrap, which is the better application of it. At least Surari isn't, like, super impressive either, but at least Surari isn't really that valuable, and if you find it for free, I guess you can kind of play it, if you have nothing better, obviously, like something like missiles or laser projectiles. But even in that circumstance, it's like, damn, you know, if it sells for, like, 32, I'm definitely, like, buying something with it, like, even if it's, like, a basic laser, which, you know, you can't buy basic lasers, but, you know, for the lack of a better word. Yeah, Kamiari anyway is just not very good. Vansir is probably like low B tier. It's in B tier right now, because it's the only item in B tier. But I would say in terms of, like, how the B tier compares to itself, the Vansir is, like, lower end of B tier, which is still good. It's definitely, like, it's noticeable. The Vansir was nerfed a little bit. Instead of having guaranteed breach chance, I think it's now down to, like, 70% breach chance, or maybe 80 actually, which is still, like, obviously super high, you know. Status effects for beam weapons occur every time they cross a tile, not a room, but an individual square inside the enemy ship. So it basically went from it went from the Vansir, because it's got a really long length as well as a 1 shield piercing. It went from dealing, like, easily, like, 6 breaches at once to about, like, maybe 9, maybe just, like, 5 or 4 breaches every swipe instead. So, like, honestly, it's probably, like, more or less just as powerful as it ever was before in terms of application of how easily it is to use the Vansir. But anyways, definitely not bad. Like, I wouldn't run it over, like, a different kind of crew kill weapon, but it's fine. It's definitely usable for what it does. Korsek, or whatever the weapon's pronunciation is, it's just a chaining halberd beam. It's, you know, like, B-ish tier. It's just, like, again, first of all, it matters. It's a beam weapon, and, like, the only chaining, like, beam weapon with that's, like noticeably, like, really powerful in how it performs is, like, the Cicada, I almost said Cicadia, but that's not the right word. It's the chaining, like, I forgot how you even pronounce the weapon name, but that's the only beam weapon that actually noticeably improves with some kind of chaining effect. So, and well, since we're not literally dealing with that weapon yet, the chaining effect is just not really that good. You'll notice a lot throughout this tier list, well, when it's applicable for chaining weapons, is that chaining in Multiverse, just in FTL actually, it's not a good concept, because again, the very first volley matters. And if your volley is being, like, actively delayed by the fact that it's just not firing sooner, not securing the fight anytime sooner or any earlier, it's just actively defeating its performance. The conservative beam is, like, I guess also B tier. It costs no power, kind of a long reload, surprisingly. Like, the conservative weapons are obviously designed to just have, like, no power. They cost no power, but they reload noticeably longer. But the beam weapon, the conservative beam, like, it really has that reload increase. Like, for example, the mini beam usually is, like, what? It's like a 10-11 second reload, and the conservative beam, you know, the same amount of damage, no status effects, by the way, not even fire. It deals it has like an 18-second cooldown, which is, like, fucking nuts for a weapon like that, but it's still very, like, decent. It's because of the fact it's conservative and that it's like having it on the bar, assuming it's not like, you know, taking up a different slot that could be used for a better weapon, like even a better other kind of conservative weapon. Assuming it's not like taking that kind of role, it's definitely a good supplement weapon. It's even good for like super shield removal, because it's, well, like a long reload, but 2 damage against super shields against every swipe is definitely pretty like not shit. So next we got the Pelta, or the conservative crew killing beam. Pelta was pretty severely nerfed. It used to be like really good, surprisingly enough. It dealt 60 crew damage for being a conservative weapon, and the breach chance was actually pretty high. I don't know if the breach chance was changed, but the breach chance just overall is really high, as well as the fact that it's, well, conservative, and its reload is pretty short too. I think it's only 16 seconds, which is the whole point of crew killing is that the fight is already safe anyway, and you don't really care how long it takes to do a crew kill. If, say, hypothetically, you had a weapon that only dealt 1 crew damage but no hull damage, and the ship you're fighting wasn't running away, it makes perfect sense to dedicate, like, I don't know, 2 hours speed hacking. I mean, it makes sense in terms of winning the run, that you'd spend enough time just crew killing away. Even if it's inefficient, it's still crew killing, like, you know, for free, effectively. And with that in mind, the Pelta is performing just fine at what it does. Next up would be Corbin, which is like probably C tier. It's just like, it's strictly a worse regular crew killing beam. Like I forgot the regular name. It's like, it starts with an F, but it's just, again, the chaining. It's like maybe it is B tier. It's just the same thing as a regular crew kill beam. The chaining property, besides the fact that it's chaining, is that it's redundant for crew killing, because if you're crew killing a ship, you don't really care how fast it's taking. You just care about securing the crew kill itself without needing to take a risk by just not dealing hull damage or anything like that. So with that in mind, it's just like a regular crew killing beam. It's nothing impressive. The only thing different about that of Corbin versus the regular crew kill beam is that it's got the chaining effect. There's no other difference. It's still same crew damage, same breach chance, applies the same amount of affliction, which reduces repairs, movement speed, as well as like environmental hazards, I think. Oh no, sorry, stun affliction. That's right. Anyways, next up we got the I was about to say guillotine, but it's the facade. Facade is more or less the perfected crew killing beam. The only downside of it being that it's well, I guess there's 2 downsides. One being it can't shield pierce, and the second one being it actually it's pretty expensive to play. It's 3 power, and granted we've had 1 other 3 power and 1 4 power beam in this tier list so far. But it's still noticeable for even for a weapon that's dedicated just to crew killing. It's definitely noticeable that the fact it's kind of expensive to play. I will say though that it is actually it's a hybrid between like basically the particle beam and the crew killing beam. It deals system damage plus crew damage, as well as some like okay breach chance. This weapon can be used to actually supplement a regular hull killing setup, but you pretty much need to get through every shield layer for it to actually do anything. Plus, it's also a pretty rare weapon. Like, some of these other weapons are, like, not common, like the Camarari or the Conservative Beam. But Guillotine, or just Facade, is noticeably rarer, so nothing to keep in mind. But otherwise, yeah, like, performance-wise, if you have the weapon itself, it's definitely pretty good. The regular crew kill beam is just same logic as applies before. It's just, good at crew killing. That's all we really need for it to do. Next up, next up we got Glaive Beam. I forgot what Glaive Beam ranks in vanilla. I'm pretty sure it ranks at about C tier as well, which is, fair for what it does. Glaive Beam was pretty much only strictly buffed for Multiverse. It's got the status effects now to deal fire plus breaches. I think its reload speed might have been decreased by like 1 a second or so, and it's got longer beam length, I think. But in any case, even if those last 2 points weren't true, it's average. It's expensive to play. Obviously, it's a beam that's going to hit pretty heavy for the three hull damage per room for a 4-power weapon, but it's an actually like good weapon in terms of like how much damage it's effectively doing. Halberd is like one of the best vanilla weapons, but in Multiverse, it's just a fair beam weapon. I wouldn't say it's like the S tier equivalent of like a beam weapon performance, but definitely it's good still. Halberd was kind of buffed and nerfed. It got buffed in terms of like it's got breach chance now, but sadly nerfed by having just I think like 10 or so pixels shorter of a beam length. So on some layouts you'll notice that you can barely hit across 5 or 4 rooms, and on actual like existing ship layouts you can notice that it actually misses out a room because of the shorter beam length. But besides that, yeah, it's 3 power, 2 hull damage. Pretty fast reload considering what it does. I mean, not fast, obviously, but 18 seconds for a beam that does consistently 6 to 8 hull damage is definitely pretty good. It's just pretty much a staple for what beam weapons are, or should be. Hull beam is more or less the same thing as halberd. Very efficient. It's been compared to mini beam before because of how efficient it is. Very fast to reload, like 14 seconds or so. Hull busting, which is like, definitely not a bad application. And of course, it does the regular beam properties, like one damage. Doesn't pierce any shields, but the breach chance along with hull bust and just the fact it's a regular beam weapon is good. It's more or less, in terms of how you're going to actually use the weapon offensively, it's pretty much just the same thing as the mini beam, just 1 plus power. And the mini beam if a mini beam was 2 reactive power, it'd still be very good. So that's all there is to it. Hull beam 2, or Lucerne 2, I guess we can call it, is just really inefficient. 4 power, 2 hull damage, but now the hull bust causes it to do 4 hull damage. So the description of the beam is that it does more damage than the glaive beam against empty rooms, specifically. The reload is shorter than glaive beam, which is why I think it's more or less, like, granted, again, like I said before, like a 4 power beam is, like, better be performing pretty good. And in this case, well, it definitely isn't, like, super, super good. But if you're able to afford it and it's, like, all you can really rely on at that moment, I'm definitely fine with using hull beam 2. It's fine. It's what it does, it's good enough. Would I say it's like I would actively like want to use it over like something like halberd? Probably not, but still fine. Lance, which is the new gen halberd beam, is just like a direct upgrade to regular halberd. It's literally more breach chance, gains fire chance, pierces a shield layer, and fires like 1 or so seconds sooner. Did I mention the shield pierce? Yeah, I think I did. It's 3 power, pierces a shield, stat-wise, 2 hull damage, 2 system damage, breaches, fires, crew damage, blah, blah, blah. The only downside, which I don't even know if it's intentional or not, but the firing animation of the beam causes it to have like a delay every time you use it. I've only done it like a few times before where like you'd actually notice it being like worse than it should be, but the delay can sometimes get in the way, But without, even with the delay, it's a very efficient weapon. Only downside, well, the only other downside rather, is the fact it's kind of rare. That's it. Mini beam is another S tier weapon. It's, well, pretty much another staple of what beam weapons are or should be. 1 power for a 1 damage beam that does consistently 4 damage because of, well, like rooms, like room layout, for example, 3 to 4 rooms it hits. Fire chance, as well as just firing extremely quickly. It's like 10 seconds. That's very good. It's one of the most efficient weapons in vanilla, and in multiverse, in terms of beams, it's very efficient. So, not too much to talk about there. The mining beam is like another B tier-ish weapon. Mining beam might be the rarest weapon out of this entire list, besides obviously like Zoltan Bleeder or something like that. The beam, it's really interesting because it's basically, if you were to make the Havocizer from the ancient weapon tier list into like a hull damaging beam, this is more or less what it would be. It deals an extra point of system damage for what it does, the hull damage wise. It pierces, I think it actually pierces 2 shields. No, sorry, it only pierces 1. I keep confusing it with something else, but pierces 1 shield, 2 system damage, 1 hull, very, very heavy breach chance. I think it's like 50% breach chance, which is like absurd, obviously, for beams to deal breaches. But besides that, yeah, it's like it's a very incredibly rare weapon for what it does. I'm actually fine with using the mining beam, to be honest. I think I've used it twice before, and it definitely wasn't bad. It's just like kind of expensive for 3 power in terms of efficiency, but it's still like fine. Definitely not a C tier. It's not an average weapon. It's above average for certainty. Next up, we got particle beam, which is like, it's very interesting. If particle beam is your only real source of reliable system damage, it's like a D tier weapon. But if you got particle beam along with other stuff helping it, it's like an easy B tier weapon. So I think for the common, I was gonna say commonwealth, what the common value of what the particle beam is, I'll put it in high C. We're gonna call it high C tier but low B tier. So imagine this, but being like down here in like the lower-ish speed category. It pierces no shields, but deals 2 system damage. Kind of high fire chance. I think it's like 30 or 20-ish fire chance, percent fire chance. Kind of long reload, but honestly, for like a prototype for being a crew killing weapon, it's plenty good for what it does. Average again, but still, like average is still fine for weapons. Average implies that until you find something that's that's considered to be a direct upgrade to what C tier does perform at, it's still a fine weapon to use. And I'm fine with using particle beam if I have other means of actually like destroying ships reliably or crew killing ships, either one. The stun beam or partisan, I don't even know what these names are at this point, is like probably just C tier. I wouldn't put a D tier. It's just a slightly worse crew killing beam. Instead of dealing like heavier crew damage with system breach chance, it just stuns them for a very long time. It's like a 16-second stun for 15 crew damage. So in terms of like if the stun is the aim of the game, the stun beam is definitely pretty like reliable, but you don't really care too much about stun, to be honest. And there's actually some situations where you want them to leave a certain room, and if the stun is not doing that, again, and granted, the stun is like literally stunning them, so it's as if they're not in the room anyway to like repair or man. But I still just wouldn't actively consider the stun to be like a good variable to have over just more crew damage. And even though I said before, like, yeah, crew killing is more of a factor of is it reliable rather than is it like timely. And even then, it's like, I don't know, is a stun beam that reliable in crew killing? Like, yeah, it's stunning and it's dealing crew damage, right, without dealing hull damage, but still, it's not better than the regular crew killing beams. So at least it's pretty good at selling for scrap though, and it's actually pretty common. Gizaram, or just the phasing beam, it's probably like another like equivalent to like particle beam, like high C tier, low B tier. 2 power beam that pierces 2 shields for 1 damage. Actually, let's put it B tier. I think now I think about it, it's probably B tier. The only real downside for it is that it has the beam speed is literally like the lowest value. I think it's like 1, maybe maybe it's 2, but it's a very slow beam. And the reload is kind of long for it. But the upside obviously being that it pierces 2 shields on its own despite it having only 1 hull damage. So it kind of can be unsupported for the most part, but at the same time I wouldn't really mind. It's funny because the beams that can pierce shields, if you have a projectile-based weapon system, it's actually kind of bad because while, like, yeah, the beam no longer absolutely needs the other weapon to break down shields for it to be more effective, but you now have some, like, you don't have as much synergy between the beam and the actual laser, or just, you know, shield removing projectile itself, right? For example, like, flak and halberd versus, like, flacking and, I don't know, fucking hull beam, I guess, right? Or really anything that pierces multiple shields. I don't know why I said hull beam there, but you get what I'm saying. It's, the synergy is kind of more important than just the straight up more shield piercing. Still obviously good. It's just what it performs for what it is. It's definitely noticeably good, but everything else about it is just eh. Piercing torch is like probably another B tier. It's compared to the regular torch, it's the same reactor cost. I think I've been forgetting to mention reactor power for most of these weapons, but I know what I'm talking about. So in any case, piercing torch, 2 power, very long cooldown. It's got over 20 seconds for a beam that only pierces 2 shields and it ignites a bunch of fires. Which, when you say out loud, like, yeah, it's definitely decent, but the fire strats have always really been interesting to like consider in terms of like how good is the weapon really performing. And it's definitely better than the regular torch, because the regular torch is slow anyway, and just adding like what, 2 more seconds, 3 more seconds to the torch is like nothing really in terms of how well it's performing. Then also it's gaining more shield piercing, which is like a very noticeable thing for a crew killing beam to have more shield piercing. It just means you have to deal with shields less often rather. You have to deal less hull damage, less system damage, which means your beams, your crew killing beams specifically, are just able to deal more effective damage against crew. So I'm definitely fine with using it, but like, if fire strat's the name of the game, the pierce torch is good. But if it's more or less just like helping kind of ignite fires and suppressing repairs, it's okay. But because it's just piercing anyway, it's probably B tier. I think it's another case of like high C tier, low B tier. But I think in this case we'll call it just low B tier. Instead of saying it's also high C tier, this is just a low B tier weapon. Pike beam is just another good old reliable vanilla beam. I don't think anything changed about the pike beam besides like 10% breach chance, so it's just the same placement as it would be. Pike beam actually might even be a B tier weapon in terms of vanilla, but in terms of multiverse and how beams overall perform, pike beam is still fine. The only real downside I can think of is just the low damage, not super efficient for the reload and power cost, but definitely still very good in terms of just knocking down. Well, the beam itself doesn't knock down shields, but once shields are knocked down, the pike beam is noticeably good. Pike 2, though, is not really the same story. It's just much more inefficient, like a lot more inefficient. 4 power, 2 hull damage, does have a very long beam length as a regular pike does, but it's just so expensive to play for no reason. I'm better off just playing halberd beam that deals, like, granted, it might against like ships that have like a very long design, something against maybe like an MFK, or not specifically an MFK, but maybe just like a rebel picket, elite, or MFK, like I said. The pike 2 can be noticeably pretty powerful in terms of just DPS and how much damage it's doing per swipe, but you can't really rely on like 1 or 2 ship layouts for the pike beam to excel. So at the end of the day, it's definitely like not bad, but I wouldn't say it's actively like outperforming the other beams. Next, we got the Dirk, one of the, like, probably the most efficient pinpoint weapon. Well, it is, and also being like one of the best beam weapons overall. 1 power, 2 hull damage, can only target 1 room at a time, but it's got like what, 9-second reload, like faster than mini beam. And mini beam was fast, so yeah, Dirk is very, really good, really reliable as well. I consistently find myself using Dirk even when I don't have a real use for it besides just super shield removal. It's just that good. Misericord, or just the pinpoint Mark II, I guess like A-ish tier. Like, it's still efficient, like 2 power for 3 hull damage against 1 system, still being relatively fast on the reload, but it's definitely not as efficient as just fucking Dirk would be. If you think about it, 2 Dirks outperform 1 Misericord, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Stiletto is just like, I don't know, C tier-ish. It's just, as I said before, the exponential decay of efficiency occurs in weapons when they become like past 3 power, or past 2 power rather, and Stiletto is just not a stranger to that. Granted, like 3 power for 4 system damage across one room. Like, again, it's not like a purifier, right? Which is obviously like just more efficient, but it's still like, it's average. Let's just call it average. So, It's still kind of fast in the reload, to be honest. It's only 18 seconds, which isn't like it's slow. It's not fast, but it's not really slow either. So whatever. Inner lance, or just the pinpoint bio beam, is like actually like the noticeably more powerful bio beam. It pierces 2 shields now, instead of just 1 shield. I think it deals same amount of crew damage, but it's got a higher breach chance and a much shorter reload. In terms of how it can perform for crew killing, I'm just fine using Inner Lance. It's actually like really good, to be honest. The Inner Lance might actually need a nerf in terms of how it performs across the crew killing aspect of the game. But besides that, like for example, on Slug A, you have 2 Inner Lances with that are both power efficient. So like 1 power for weapons that deal 60 crew damage that also pierce 2 shields. That's actually fucking absurd. But for the regular Inner Lance, it's just like it's still really good. I don't mind myself using the Inner Lance, to be honest, for crew killing, if I can afford it. The chaining pinpoint is like another really powerful weapon, super efficient. This is probably one of the only chaining weapons in the game that actually doesn't really suffer that much about chaining. Granted, it's not really going to be doing that much on its own, but if you can, like, in terms of actually destroying a ship, you still gotta get through shields somehow, and the damage is not going to come from thin air. But if you can get the training up pretty quickly, and it's not just like using the weapon at its base performance of just like 10 seconds, and then chaining, and then 2 hull damage, blah blah blah, 3 power. If you can get through those few hurdles, which honestly aren't too hard to overcome, it's a very powerful weapon. I do see myself using this quite often. I should use it more often, to be honest. But in any case, we got Pre-Torch next, which is like a really shit weapon. It's D tier easily. It's easily the worst preemptive weapon for obvious reasons. The Pre-Torch, I can't remember if it got nerfed or not, but I do remember being like really powerful, and then it just got changed somehow. That just made it horrible. Pierces all shields, and it can ignite fires for absolute certainty for 100% guaranteed fire chance. But its beam speed, along with its just beam length, it's only able to reasonably light up 1 room, not full room, but just 1 tile plus 3 other tiles and maybe a different room. And depending on some enemy layouts, it might even be worse. It might only be like a consistently 2 fire room, 2 tile fire for like its swipe. And the fact that it can't fire again after it fires once, and that it's expensive to play or buy. To play, it's requires no power, and it fires right away. But it's just not really that good. If the Pre-Torch was more like the Loot Torch, it's not Loot Torch. If it was more like the Pierce Torch, it would be noticeably more effective in terms of like how many fires it's spreading. But for it only consistently dealing like 2 to 3 fires, I just don't see it being that reliable as a weapon. Like if you get it for free, it's just a conservative weapon that's just dealing a bunch of fires right away. It could be used to suppress some repairs if you wanted to, but I don't know. It's not that impressive of a weapon. Excuse me. Next, we got the Pro Hull Beam, which is like another arguably meme weapon. Heals the enemy hull while dealing crew damage. It requires no reactor power to use, but at the same time, it's not exactly good to use for crew killing. It allows hull damaging weapons to more effectively commit to more crew kills because of the hull repair. But at the same time, it's just even though it's quite literally free to use in terms of reactor power, I would still prefer just to use something that would be literally dedicated to more crew killing. For example, Pelter, right? If you have Pelter on the bar, you don't really need to hull repair anyway. The only way I could see hull repair working is if maybe they have really low hull and high system caps. Maybe they have some reason they have high level weapons that you need to get down, but they have say for example they have a 6 power weapon system and the enemy ship has 9 hull, right? And your other weapons obviously aren't sophisticated in some system damage, so they can do 1-to-1 ratio. In that case, yeah, I could see it working, but it's also just a really like, you know, the description of it literally being oxymoronic, and that it's rare, like insanely rare. But anyways, Scythe is like probably another B tier weapon. It's pretty much just the inverse of what Pike is kind of designed to be. Instead of like a long beam length, this is like a very, very fast speed beam speed. The beam length is actually still pretty good on the Scythe, and I would say it's better than Pike, but honestly I find myself using the length more often than the speed, and the Scythe is only really good at the speed. Breach chance is like still like okay, obviously for being a beam weapon. Status effects happening every time you cross a tile, but everything else about the weapon is just like no real. It's not better than the Pike, and because of the length, it's just like I don't know. Pike fires fast, by the way. Like its beam speed is not slow either. So the Scythe is more or less just a Pike that has much less beam length. So Torch is probably about C tierish. It's, well, besides the fact it's, well, like the regular, I talked about it before. I actually talked about it, the weapon itself. I talked about it when I was ranking the piercing torch, but it's just like like piercing no shields and only inflicting like not as many fires. Surprisingly, the length is actually a little bit worse, and the fact that it's also 2 reactor power while the piercing torch is also 2 reactor power, like I don't know, it's just not that great. Like it's fine for crew killing still, like being a crew kill weapon, but I don't find myself being that impressed by it most of the time. Volge is like a big beam, but it's like a really annoying beam to play. 5 reactor power when I could just use 2 halberd beams to deal like a cascading amount of more damage and more system wide disruption, or just damage, I guess you can call it. Volge is also very expensive to, well, 5 power, expensive to buy, rare to find, long reload. I mean, like, it hits very heavy, right? Like, the people who said, oh, Glaive is heavy, as best as it gets, well, now we got Volge. It's just, like, I don't find myself ever relying on Volge, like, ever. Like, at least sometimes with the Glaive, it's like, okay, I didn't have much better, but the Volge is like, when the fuck would I ever use this? It's so dumb to play. 5 reactor power out of a typical 8 reactor weapon system. Like, dude, come on now, right? It's not good. Zoltan Deleter is just like a significantly worse crew kill weapon. It's like, granted, pierces all shields now, but it's beam speed. It's better off just using, like, if you're using it to crew kill, you're better off kind of like using it as if it's a pinpoint. So you use it to like deal damage to maybe like 1 or 2 crew, and then depower it, and then repower it so it can fire it like that much sooner. That might not be the most optimal use of it now I think about it, but at the same time, it's not really an optimal weapon to begin with. So, you can't exactly make something better than it is. Like I'm not gonna say the Zoltan Deleter is good because it's a Zoltan Deleter. Well, no, that's just not how the weapon works. So yeah, that's the next tier list done. 2 out of 8. In S tier we have Lance, Mini Beam, Dirk, and the chaining pinpoint weapon. In A tier we have Guillotine / Facade, Halberd, Hull Beam 1, Pike, Misericord, and Analance, or Analace, or whatever. B tier we have Rancier, Corset, Conservative Beam, Pelta, Corbin, Crew Kill Beam, Mach 1 I guess you can call it, Hull Beam 2, Mining Beam, Gizaram, Piercing Torch, Pike 2, and Scythe. C tier we got Particle Beam, Suari, Glaive Beam, Partisan, Stiletto, and Torch. And then finally in D tier we got Camaraderie, Pre-Torch, Pro Hull Beam, Volge, and Zoltan Deleter. And honestly enough, Zoltan Deleter is more like an event weapon, maybe even like a miscellaneous weapon, but I don't know. I guess it's common enough to rank it. Next, we got bombs, the subvariant to missiles. So don't expect this tier list to be very in depth. It's the missile weapons. Rad bomb is like, honestly, like it actually might be one of the worst crew killing weapons in the game. The only real best application of it is that it does heavy crew damage. For 1 bomb, like it's like 90 crew damage for like the 1 bomb, but it it doesn't deal anything else. It doesn't do any system damage, no status effects. Actually, it might have a small breach chance, but every other application of it actually killing crew is just not good. I would much rather crew kill a ship with like breach bombs. Granted, it might take a few more missiles, but at the same time, let's say if you're against a ship that's got like a mantis and a like a shell, you're gonna have to use 2 bio bombs to actually no, you're gonna have to use 4 because they both have 100 health. You're gonna have to use 4 bombs, assuming you can't get them in the same room. While the breach bomb, you might get away with crew killing just by using 1 breach bomb inside the oxygen because, well, the shell isn't going to be able to repair it because of ×2 suffocation damage, and the mantis much less because it literally can't repair it in time. Like even if it dedicated its life to repairing, it couldn't. So, anyways, now we got breach bomb though, which is like a superbly powerful bomb. Better, besides the fact it's good at crew killing, it's good bore support, good projectile support. Sometimes I find my setup actually having this breach bomb carried over into like the Nexus sometimes even like the ancient site recovery site / ancient sectors, just because of how effective the breach bomb is. Fast, it's the same damage output as a small bomb, except now it does a breach, so slightly longer reload by like 2 or so seconds, but boo-hoo, who cares? It's a fucking missile weapon. So Stimulant is like probably even like D tier, honestly. It provides massive buffs to your crew. It's like 100% more additively more buffs to like everything except maximum HP. It's like sabotage, attack damage, repair, movement speed, maybe even like heal speed if I remember correctly. But obviously the innate HP doesn't increase, as well as the like attack speed. But I don't know, like the best application of it, like the stimulant bomb, is when you have like boarding and then you use the stimulant bomb to help your boarding. But I think you're better off just using the missiles plus scrap to use it into like a bomb that can actually literally help disrupt systems. So with that in mind, it's just not good. At least it's rare, so you don't have to come across it too often, and if you do, it sells for like 25 scrap. But besides that, it's not really. Conceptually, I understand how it could be okay, but overall, it's just not really that important. Cluster is pretty much just the alternative to a payload that you could find. The only reason why it would be actively worse is because it's got longer reload and that it's much rarer. I would rather play like more payloads and play more clusters. In theory, if every bomb lands, it actually does more system damage per more efficiency for the system damage, because it's 2 reactor power for 3 small bombs versus payload, which is like 2 for 4. Well, 2 reactor power for 4 system damage, whilst cluster is 2 power for 6 system damage. Cluster can inflict fires, I believe. The enemy vision can't for some reason. I actually maybe it can, but in any case, cluster is definitely really good. It's definitely the best. Maybe it's not the best, but it's a very good new gen weapon, and I don't mind myself playing this. Like sometimes it's like, yeah, I get it. For maybe like 1 to 2 setups, it might not be as optimal, like compared to something like maybe like Recycler Bomb or some other crazy batshit weapon that's just good. But I definitely don't mind myself playing Cluster Bomb if I can like reasonably play it. Conservative Bomb is just like a slightly worse small bomb, but a slightly worse small bomb is still like just not noticeably any worse than like a regular bomb would be anyway. Conservative bomb, so it takes no reactive power, except that now it fires a little bit slower. I think its innate fire chance might be slightly worse, but not by much. Next up would be the what's this called again? I was gonna say ice bomb, but it's not. It's the crystal bomb. Crystal bomb was immensely buffed. It's now 1 reactor power. It's able to actually deal system damage, and it can also actually inflict breaches / fires after it locks down the room. So sometimes this could just be an alternative to a bore support. I'd say the biggest downside would be the only 1 system damage. Sometimes might not cut it, but overall it's definitely still a really effective weapon, especially considering the fact it can lock down and fire. as well as it gains the system damage, right? The crystal bomb in in vanilla, the only reason why it wasn't completely shit, it was the fact that the lockdown could actually help a little bit because just because of the crew types inside vanilla weren't very complex in nature. In multiverse, if you lock down the room to your own benefit, but then the enemy crew suddenly have I don't know, like maybe they have like some surging crew that uses an active ability that just instantly wins in the fight. Yeah, the lockdown isn't pretty then, but anywhere else, so the bomb is just locking down the room for a better reason is definitely good. Cherry bomb, or just the chaining fire bomb, is just more or less how a regular fire bomb would perform. I guess for I would say its benefit compared to the regular fire bomb is the fact that it can deal sometimes the regular fire bomb kind of struggles with applying the same fire multiple times. Even in the early game, if you're against maybe the bad kind of ship, they could actually extinguish the fire / deal with the fire somehow sooner than it takes the firebomb to fire again, right? And the cherry bomb obviously won't struggle with that. The other downside being, well, now you're firing more often with a cherry bomb, so it's taking more missile consumption. But again, this common theme of missiles inside multiverse, we don't really care about consumables, so I'm fine with using cherry bomb. Regular firebomb is probably about C-ish tier. I just said before the cherry bomb is more or less the same as a firebomb, but because of that chaining effect and the fact that the fire spread is much more consistent, I just would say the firebomb is just innately weaker. Granted, you can find 2 firebombs and just kind of solve that issue, but my counterpoint being, you're gonna dedicate 2 weapon slots just to dealing more fires. Damn, that's pretty inefficient, but that's enough. Firebomb is average. That's really it. Medical bomb is same thing as stimulant bomb. It's just it helps the boarders heal, but at the same time, why help the current boarders heal in their fight where you can just get stronger boarders in the first place, right? If you're in fights where the med bomb is actually mattering, you're doing something wrong. You should get better boarding party, not a better setup to help the same weaker boarding party, right? But anyways, yeah, I guess it could be used to upgrade your med bay if you want to, I guess, if you need to, maybe. I actually had a funny circumstance a few weeks back where I was about to take I was going for the cure task. I forgot the exact name of it, but it gives you the harpoon launcher. You need a level 2 medical system for the blue option in order to actually save the bishop himself, and I actually forgot to upgrade for it. Except in my storage check, I had the bomb available, and I could just immediately upgrade it to level 2 because I didn't have enough scrap to upgrade the medbay itself. So that was a pretty interesting plot armor for me, I guess. That I happened to have the medical bomb, and to be honest, the medical bomb is actually able to also of doing the blue option on the bishop. But honestly, just having the level 2 medbay anyway is just good. So that's enough of that. Ion bomb is another C-ish, maybe even B tier. Iron bomb is more or less the same as it was in vanilla. It's just the full ion damage. Oh, by the way, most of these bombs were buffed one way or another with accuracy modifiers. Same thing as missiles, which is if there's any weapon that actively doesn't need a buff in accuracy, it would be missiles. But that's the dev team thought the missiles needed the accuracy modifier compared to other weapons. So in any case, though, the ion bomb, 1 power, 4 ion damage. Kind of long reload, but with training and such, you can make the ion damage stack, so not too bad. I'd say it's average. So Recycler bomb is another batshit crazy weapon in terms of how effective it is. The only downside being just the reload speed, and I guess no status effects. But at the same time, you're not really relying on status effects anyway. It's more just the reload. One power, 17 seconds, and 2 system damage without ever needing to spend a missile. Even if you were rich on missiles, the Recycler bomb is still really, really good. I find myself using Recycler bomb very often. I sometimes even buy this weapon just because of how good it is. Repair bomb, another story of being just a supplement. Did that not really help you? Small bomb, as I said before, just it's just a staple bomb of just, efficiency. Very fast, good system damage, with good efficiency for what it does. It's just 2 system damage for 1 power. It's just very good board support. Stun Bomb, on the other hand, compared to Ion Bomb, was very, very buffed. Same amount of reactive power as it would be in vanilla, except nowadays and stuff. Oh, just, a cheeky 1 ion damage. Boom! It does 5 ion damage for 1 bomb. Reload was kind of increased, but 5 ion damage is like my god, like it's crazy how much of a payload difference that is compared to the regular ion bomb. There was a pun intended that time, by the way, if you didn't catch it. But yeah, Stun Bomb is definitely really good. The only reason why I wouldn't use this weapon super consistently is because it just doesn't really help the non-ionic weapons that much, and it's really long. It's a long reload, and I'd much rather have something that's more in tune with the actual bore support. Still, Stun Bomb is it's definitely above average for certainty. Next, we got the Spore launchers. And funny enough, Spore launch, the whole Vampire lore isn't really expanded on yet in Multiverse. That's going to be the vegetation update, which is I think it's either next update or maybe 2 updates from now. But in any case, the Spore launchers are in the game now, so they are fair to be ranked. Spore Mark 1 is just a slightly weaker small bomb, but probably not by much. 1 power for 2 individual bombs that each deal 1 system damage. But the Spore launchers have a unique property that deal a lot of system damage. So if you shoot the same, well, you are going to obviously shoot the same Spore launcher into the same room. But if both bombs hit the same crew, it'll deal 60 crew damage instead of just the regular 30 crew damage from the small bomb for comparison. It also got breach chance instead of fire chance, plus the ammo replication. It's kind of slow though for Spore launchers. I think it's 14 seconds, which is actually it's starting to become a little noticeable, but otherwise it's a very efficient weapon. Spore 2 is more or less just a slightly different cluster bomb. Definitely not the same amount of system damage, but again, between the ammo replication, the increased crew damage, along with just breaches, if I didn't mention already the ammo application chance as well being present, I'm fine with using it still. It's definitely good, above average for certainty. But I wouldn't put it really that much. It's not at the same level as Spore 1. Wait, this tier list. Spore 1. Anyways, chaining Spore is just this is interesting because chaining Spore is actually as rare as the Spore launchers kind of overall are anyway. The chaining one is actually the rarest. It's more or less just a chain. It's just a chaining Spore 1 launcher. I guess the chaining effect is actually pretty okay for it, considering the initial chain is only 2 seconds slower than a regular Spore 1, and because of the ammo fabrication, the chaining actually wanting to shoot multiple volleys of the same bomb is actually okay, because of that built-in ammo fabrication. I still wouldn't say it's it's super efficient in its chaining, but it's definitely good, I would say. Heavy Spore. It's just it's basically, in my terms, it's just an organic payload. 2 reactive power for 4 system damage. Ammo fabrication, and it's got the only difference between this and the payload is that it doesn't have the guaranteed breach chance, and well, obviously it doesn't count as Aether Tech, as well as it's got a 3-second longer cooldown, 3-second longer cooldown. So, but otherwise, I'm basically using a organic payload more or less. So, Spore Stun though is just it's pretty much the same as the regular Spore 1, but instead of dealing crew damage, it just inflicts a bunch of stuns. And it costs 1 more reactive power, and it's got a longer reload. So, still good for the bombing aspect, but for everything else, it's not really. It's definitely not an upgrade. It's more like a side grade, and just because it's a side grade with no real reason of being a side grade besides just stunning properties, I guess. I wouldn't say it's better than the regular Spore 1. So yeah, that's the bomb tier list. 3 out of 7, and it's been some time. Anyways, we got. In S tier, we have Breach Bomb 1, or just Breach Bomb, Cluster Bomb, Conservative Bomb, Recycler Bomb, Small Bomb, Spore 1, and Heavy Spore. In A tier we have Crystal, the Crystal Bomb, Spore 2, and Stunning Spore, or Spore Stunner. In B tier we have Cherry Bomb, Stun Bomb, and Chaining Spore. In C tier we have Fire Bomb, Irradiation Bomb, and Ion Bomb. And in D tier we have Stimulant Bomb, Meta Bomb, and Repair Bomb. Next up we got the Renegade weapon tier list. And this is probably one of the more unique weapon tier lists because of, well, the fact that these are coming from Renegades. But I figured it's thematic to have, so. Also, you'll notice that the toggle flak is in 3 separate weapons because it's, well, like, you know, obviously performing in 3 different kinds of weapons, but that's besides the point. We talked about adaptive beams before. This is now a 5 power beam that's barely functioning better than Kamarari, and Kamarari was already really shit, so yeah, easy F tier. We can actually just call this the adaptive beam. Amber is very interesting. It's it locks down the room, inflicts fires for 3 reactor power. It only pierces 1 shield, surprisingly, instead of piercing like a regular, like maybe 2 shields, as it could be expected to be. But yeah, fires plus the lockdown every time it's gonna hit, plus 2, you know, hull plus system damage is definitely really good. Probably about 8 tier. I'm definitely not minding to play this weapon if I find it. Battery beam is just more or less a slightly weaker Kira power core. It allows you to play a higher weapon power system from going from 8 to 10 because it provides 2 power to the weapon to its right. So, you know, 8 plus 2, 10. I guess the only downside being that the beam, it obviously loses a lot of value for each weapon slot you're missing from the standard 4 weapons. Like, for example, on if you have 3 weapon slots, it's the battery beam is noticeably not as good in terms of like the providing power value for the other weapons. But for a ship with 4 weapon slots, this is really good. So Big Ion is arguably better than the preemptive Ion, but the only reason why I'm not going to innately say it's better is just because it's got the 1 less immediate ion damage, which more or less doesn't really matter in some of the fights where 6 ion damage is enough. But the Big Ion, it's got 1 less system damage. Not system damage. 1 less ion damage compared to the regular fucking preemptive Ion, but it now gains full shield piercing capabilities. And it also one-hits any crude hit. It can one-tap any crude hits. It's got like what? It's like a million crew damage, I think. Maybe not a million, but it one-shots a crew. And if you do, it's funny enough though. If you do aim this into the shield system, the Big Ion, it'll deal 10 ion damage because the way beams work is that if they're piercing shields while dealing ion damage, which is also a reason why ion beams don't exist in the regular game, at least without the Renegade collection. It'll deal ion damage to the shield system plus whatever it's hitting on the ship itself. So 5 plus 5 is like, you know, 10 ion damage to the 1 shield system, assuming they aren't resistant to it, is exceptionally lethal, to say the least. But that's besides the point. And now that I think about it, because I actually, I reminded myself about the system damage from earlier. I'm not including the chaos weapons, the chaos renegade drops. More or less, just because I don't have that much experience with a lot of the chaos weapons, to be honest. There would be, I have like a good idea on a few of them. Like for example, like the never miss, it becomes a pinpoint. The strawberry, which is like it's a spoiler, to say the least. I'm fucking talking about spoilers while I'm making a tier list video, but anyways, I just think it's not really that good to do a chaos like renegade tier list or a weapon drop tier list, because I don't really know that much about all the weapons. So in case, now we got the Pharaoh, which is the basically just the Fed B's artillery as if it was a weapon. Probably like I guess B tier. The only reason why it's B tier is because it does system damage. If it didn't deal any system damage, it would easily be C, maybe even low B tier or D tier. But because it does the system damage, along with the fact that it actually does fire kind of fast, surprisingly enough, for being like a big fat gun that deals one large mine launcher, it actually does fire kind of fast. I wouldn't see myself playing this super often, but I definitely think it's considered to be pretty good in what it does. Blaster Beam, unfortunately, is like high A tier, but before it was changed, it was easily one of the best Renegade drops. Before it was changed, it was a 3-power glaive beam that just couldn't pierce shields, and that was it. It was a much faster reload as well. But now it's a 0-cost halberd beam that can fire twice. It has one initial kind of long reload, and after it fires once, its chaining effect kicks in, and immediately it's able to fire again after like 1 or 2 seconds. So it's basically like a halberd beam that's gonna fire twice consecutively really fast, which is good, obviously, but like compared to its former glory, it's not like super incredible. Next up, we get the Big Suck Bomb, which is like pretty much like the next door neighbor of the adaptive beam in terms of how shit it is. Like, I see why it's good in terms of like maybe using it in terms of like fights where like they got a bunch of crew and stationed in one room, but at the same time, like the power drain just doesn't matter. I really don't care about the power drain. It's not permanent. It barely does anything on its own, even if it was permanent. And it just costs a weapon slot power to use it. It's just not good. It's fine, but it's just, I'm much, actually it's not fine. It's way below average, but I don't know. When I find the Renegade and I'm able to kill it, I actually feel sad. Not because it's like, oh man, like, you know, it might have been a tough fight, but because I couldn't find a better drop. So, and it's funny because the boss that this weapon comes from is actually kind of tough. The only way you can probably counter it really easily is by if you like hack and like cloak plus hack their weapons, along with like having a super shield, because then they can't do shit to you. But everything else is like, yeah, it's like a tough Renegade fight for like a really shit weapon. So I don't know. Next we got the Danish missiles, which might raise an eyebrow or two because this isn't a Renegade weapon drop. It's a the Thorocracy Badlands drop at Turbine, but I found this was in the missile weapons sprite folder, and I couldn't really find a good spot for it besides, like, I guess here. You're able to get the Danish missiles once you fight a coalition cruiser, and to be honest, a coalition cruiser is actually pretty close to like a regular Renegade in terms of what it has and offensively. And it's more or less going to be like a kind of a Renegade drop. You on average only fight the same Renegade one time in a run, and for Thorocracy Badlands, you fight the coalition cruiser one time. So Danish missile, though, it's 4 power for like 5 hull plus 6 system damage. Very fast reload, though. It's like only like 16-17 seconds plus very high stats effects. I often sell it in my videos when I go to Turbine, but that's only because I already have more efficient weapons for it instead of it, rather. But if I were to have to use Danish, I'm fine with using it. It's definitely like a good weapon. It's a missile, so you gotta remember that. Frost Charger is like probably like B-ish tier. It's is it 3 power? This is why even when I was ranking like boss or Renegade weapon drops, I was like, should I even rank this stuff? But I was like, you know what, fine. I know most of these weapons enough, so it's fine. But the Frost Charger, hypothetically is 3 power, but I'm pretty sure it's actually just 2 power. It can charge up to 4 frost laser shots that deal the regular frost laser stats effects, being like, you know, one hull, 1 system, 30 crew damage, locks down the room, blah blah blah. Shot spread, which makes it obviously worse than it should be, but overall it's fine. It's efficient for what it does, but I'm not super happy in using it. If I'm even when I'm using a projectile-based weapon system, I wouldn't use this over like a charge laser, for example. Next up, we got the I don't even know what this weapon is called in game, but it's an ion weapon that chains its speed, its reload speed plus its ion damage. It's probably the best ion weapon besides, well, like, you know, what's above it and what's in the regular ion tab. 3 power for a basically an adaptive ion that also changes its reload speed, as I just said. It's more or less able to chain its own ion damage, like more or less indefinitely. Only reason why it wouldn't is because of its well, it isn't guaranteed to land. It's a projectile weapon, so it can miss, and even if you miss one shot, like big whoop you fucking do, it does 5 ion damage for like 4 reload speed, 4 second reload speed. So yeah, I don't complain about having this weapon if I'm doing ion strats. Never Miss, though, is just a slightly more expensive Hermes. It's a 3 power laser that pierces 10 shield layers, inflicts a hull bust and a breach, a guaranteed breach. It's just a missile weapon that looks like a laser. That's just all there is to it. Only reason why it isn't literally like a batshit insane. Well, it is actually a really good weapon, but the only reason why it isn't like, my god, why isn't this weapon already nerfed, is because it's just kind of expensive to play, and the fight it comes from is kind of dangerous. So, in any case, though, next up we got the light laser charger. I actually used to think this was actually a pretty bad weapon, but over the course of time, I think, yeah, this is pretty good actually. While light lasers themselves aren't very high performance, when you add 5 different light lasers onto a weapon that's 2 reactor power, and that can supplement other weapons that do need the projectile count, it's actually very good. It basically becomes like a flak kind of weapon, except that it's just much more consistent in the way it deals damage. Plus, if you need the DPS, it can always fire 1 individual charge, so it's a light laser. No system damage, but 5 shots that can stack up. It's pretty good. Nightshade, or just like, I don't even know how this weapon functions, to be honest. I'm pretty sure it just fires like, instead of being like the typical Hydra missiles, it just fires like one big barrage of like 5 different missiles that deal 2 hull damage each, I guess. Fine, I'm okay to play it. It's just not really that impressive overall. It's a missile though, so. Obsidian is another like slightly underperforming weapon. Obsidian is definitely a direct upgrade compared to the regular, like something like from Ares, but Obsidian Missile is just still not like super great. It's just like it's 4 power. For, yeah, granted it can deal 12 hull damage if you aim it at an empty room, but like it's just the effectiveness of missiles kind of more reside in how versatile they are, and the Obsidian Missile is only good at just annihilating one kind of, well, empty room, I guess. If you annihilate one empty room, that could translate into just winning the fight anyway because of the immediate 12 system hull damage. But still, it's just like, I don't know. I don't think it's just that impressive of a big missile weapon. But once again, it's a missile weapon, so it can't really be like, oh, it's bad. You know, it's a missile weapon. So next up, we got Promotion Bomb, which is sits really comfortably next to the Big Suck Bomb. Funny enough, the chaotic version of the Promotion Bomb is actually very powerful, but for the regular version, it's just not good. Before it was hotfixed to not have the bug that can actually permanently promote your crew for free. Well, for as free as it gets. It was actually pretty good, but now that, you know, obviously that glitch just no longer exists, it only buffs your. It turns your crew into 1 elite progression further in its race category. Like, for example, if you got a human, it turns to a human soldier. If you have a soldier, it turns to an MFK. Or so maybe on the other side, maybe you got Mantis turns into a Suzerain. Free Mantis, Warlord. Orchid, Chieftain. Right? You get the idea. So for 15 seconds though, like, blah, I don't really care. But I don't know. Like, it's fine. It's just like, I keep saying it's fine because I want to make it clear that, like, that these weapons aren't just innately completely ass, unlike the adaptive beam below it. But I still just I don't like using these weapons. They aren't that good. So, slot gun is more or less just like a kind of like a slightly different like flak 3. Like it shoots 2 more projectiles, much larger shot radius, but it's got ammo replication chance, and it just like does a lot of breaches apparently, I guess, from what I remember. But yeah, it's just like a better flak 3. 3 power, a little expensive. I mean, a lot of these Renegade weapons are expensive to play, but that's besides the point. I wouldn't use slot gun a shit ton, but it's fine. Like, I definitely don't mind playing it. Steel launcher is literally like the flak equivalent of the Renegade loot. I can't remember if the shots itself are slow from the steel launcher. I'm gonna assume the average, but the only application of it being that it just does the flak projectile is getting hull bust, and in terms of whatever else is going on in this tier list, we're comparing B tier has a missile weapon and C tier is a flak launcher. So let's keep that in mind that while this definitely isn't innately worse than something like just like a standard flak 3 or flak 4, whichever it compares to, there's a missile weapon above its tier, so I don't think it really deserves B tier. Still fine. It also sells for a lot of scrap, actually, from what I remember. It sells for like 80 scrap, which is huge, so. Strawberry launcher, though, is like pretty much the best kernel weapon, I guess. But it's a Renegade drop, so would I really call it the best kernel? Not really, but 3 power for it's basically, I think, for a better comparison, it's more or less the a Carnage weapon if it didn't have the shot spread, because the regular Carnage has the shot spread. Strawberry launcher does not. It shoots 3 projectiles. They each deal 2 hull plus system damage and very high breach chance. I don't think it's guaranteed, but it's like 80% from what I remember. And it got ammo replication, and it's actually a pretty fast reload from what I remember. It's maybe not very fast, but it's like 18 seconds, which is again not super slow. It's just a missile weapon with ammo replication and whatever. So obviously it's gonna rank extremely high. Sustaining is another very, very powerful weapon. It's a combination of a cycler tech plus conservation tech. And this time around, it's got a much longer reload, being like 20 seconds or so. But it now gains fire plus breach chance, as well as it being literally completely free to use. So, take that as you will. Next up, we got the toxic toggle flak, 7 projectiles, each one dealing like increased crew damage, like 45 crew damage, inflicting affliction, and breach chance. More or less just like B-ish tier. Expensive to play for 4 power, but better than steel launcher for sure. Fire flak though fire toggle flak is really, really good ranking. Only downside of it really being is just that it does, but it has very high power requirements cost. And what's another good? It's like, what else can I really say for it? Each shot has a 100% chance to inflict a fire, compared to something like the rad toggle flak only being 50% chance for fires. Fire toggle flak is 100% fires, and shot spread is actually not very, very large, so it can cause a lot of fires. Easily cause a 4-tiled fire if it hits the right room. Ionic flak though is just more or less the same thing as the regular rad toggle flak. Inflicts the ion damage along with the regular flak projectiles doing 1 hull, 1 system. No status effects, I don't think. And I guess each one kind of compares a little differently. The rad flak just being overall just a better flak launcher. Fire flak being just extremely versatile in fires, and the ion flak being like really good against enemies that might struggle with power management or just in general nuking a super shield. And then toxic pods, which is just like a faulty crew killing weapon. It doesn't pierce any shields. It's got shot radius. It doesn't inflict a lot of breaches, and it does system damage along with crew damage, but I just don't really care to use it. It's not good. I would put it D tier, but it's definitely much more capable than what D tier is capable of. So that's next up for the boss/renegade weapon tier list. In S tier, we have Strawberry Launcher, Battery Beam, Big Ion, Never Miss, and Sustaining, or Sustain, whatever you want to call it. A tier, we have Amber Launcher, Blaster Beam, the Chaining/Adaptive Ion Weapon, Light Charger, and then Fire Toggle Flak. In B tier, we have Pharaoh, Dianish, Frost Charger, Nightshade, Obsidian, Slot Gun, Slot Gun, and then Rad Toggle Flak, and then Ionic Toggle Flak. In C tier, we have Steel Launcher, Toxic Pods. In D tier, we have promotion bomb and big suck bomb, and then in adaptive beam tier we have the adaptive beam. Next tier list we got is the crystal tier list, crystal weapon tier list. Crystal weapons overall were pretty significantly buffed just in performance. Almost every crystal weapon was decreased in power cost, except the crystal heavy weapons, for example. The status effects of them were buffed, and obviously the elite crystal weapons are considerably stronger. So, before I ramble about nothing though, and I just actually get to the tier list itself. First up we have is the Crystal Burst 1. Definitely about like B-ish tier. It's above average. It's 2 shots, each one dealing 1 system, 1 hull, 10% breach chance, as well as just piercing 1 shield. Definitely not an upgrade to like regular laser projectile weapons, but still really good. Crystal Burst 2 is just more or less the same. Still efficient for what it does. It's 2 power for 3 shots, each one piercing 1 shield, dealing 1 hull, 1 system, plus a low but existing breach chance. It's overall longer cooldown. It's like what, 3 or so seconds, maybe even 4 seconds longer. But Crystal Burst 3 was considerably weak in vanilla, being 3 power for 3 shots. That just didn't deal that much more, like. It just did not have efficiency, but in Multiverse it does, so that's all there is to it. Plus you can get multiple. For each crystal weapon you have, it basically doubles its value in terms of shield piercing, because, well, you can ignore shields that much more. Crystal Charger, though, is just pretty much identical to the regular Crystal Burst one. It's actually, if you charge both shots up, it's the same cooldown, and pierces 1 shield still, and it's just the same. Like, it's not a direct upgrade, and I guess the charge overall is better for like a tactical performance, because maybe you only want to shoot 1 shot, but you can just do that with a regular Crystal Burst anyway. Granted, you don't have to depower the weapon and wait for the full reload versus the charge weapon having, to shoot 1 shot for one unload, but at the same time it doesn't really matter at that point if you're trying to like mitigate damage with a weapon that's all about inflicting damage. So Crystal Flak, though, or just the scatter crystal, not really impressive. Expensive play, only shoots 4 crystal shards. The shot radius is actually kind of precise. I think it's a little bit smaller than a regular flak launcher, and it definitely like hits kind of heavy, but it's really expensive to play. And at the same time, I'd rather just have a bunch of like other crystal weapons in its place. Like, for example, having like maybe a Crystal Burst 2 plus a Crystal Heavy weapon in terms of like having the same amount of like 3 weapon power is much better than just having just 1 Crystal Flak or Scatter Crystal. Crystal Heavy 1 is like a really, really good weapon, though. It's just 1 power, more or less just a piercing heavy laser, from what it ranks in, well, I guess as a piercing heavy laser would. Cooldown is actually not cooldown. Sorry, the reload is quite quick. It's like 10 seconds. I guess the downside for obviously being crystal weapons is that they're targetable by defense drones, and it isn't an innate buff to the heavy laser like the regular one. But overall, it still performs a very good weapon. Crystal Heavy, I'm definitely fine using it. Crystal Heavy 2 is just like okay. It's definitely buffed from what it was in vanilla, not by a shit ton, but a noticeable ton. 2 power for 1 shot that'll deal 4 hull plus 4 system damage, guaranteed breach, along with just a bunch of just nasty effects, considering it does for a payload of 4 damage for 1 shot for 1 unload. Only real downside I could think, 2 downsides being that it isn't really that efficient in terms of how much damage it's doing for the power cost and with the reload speed. And then obviously the second one being, well, the reload speed itself is quite long. So, and crystal weapons kind of are known for being really fast firing. So the fact that the Heavy 2 is actually kind of long is a noticeable thing compared to the regular crystal weapons. Neural Crystal, though, is also very effective. It's 1 power, 1 shot, but it inflicts a 10-second stun that can be applied indefinitely, assuming the ship has like indefinite hull, which it doesn't. But again, it can the stunning can stack on itself, Pierces 1 shield, 1 hull, 1 system damage, and fires quick. It's like I think it's a 7-second cooldown, which is very fast. Well, I keep saying cooldown, but I mean reload speed. Anytime I say cooldown in this video, just imagine reload speed. That's all there is to it. Elite Crystal Burst, though, is it's kind of funny because the elite crystal weapons are actually straight up 100% direct upgrades compared to the regular crystal weapons. They gain ability to lock down the room upon hit, as well as pierce an additional shield layer for a total of 2 shield piercing. So, for example, the Crystal Burst 1 is only able to get through 2 shield layers, while the Crystal Burst, Elite Crystal Burst 1 is able to get through 3 shield layers by itself. Crystal Burst 2 is just the same thing. It's just a direct upgrade from the regular Burst 2. Efficient still, and obviously pierces another shield layer. Crystal Charger is... The Elite Crystal Charger is probably another direct upgrade. I would say, well, it's a direct upgrade, but I wouldn't assume it's like a straight up a direct tier list, like a tiering upgrade, for example. But I still think it is. It's just pretty much the regular Elite Crystal Burst, but now it can stack charges. The Scatter Crystal Elite one is... While it is a direct upgrade, it's still being a scatter crystal. Only reason why it's B tier is now that it pierces 2 shields for each crystal projectile, so it's more reliable in terms of how much scatter it's actually dealing. But, well, scatter, well, in its scattering volley, how much damage it actually does, right? So, 2 shield pierce, so let the lockdown and the reasonably okay, moderate breach chance. Still a good weapon. Not good, sorry. Above average. Elite Crystal Heavy, though, is easily the best crystal weapon. It's just the regular Crystal Heavy, which is already a very effective weapon, but now it gains 2 shield piercing, plus the lockdown, so... yeah. Crystal Heavy, though, Elite Crystal Heavy is just actually the first Elite Crystal weapon that's the same tier as its regular counterpart. Just because it's just, like... I guess the one additional shield pierce is like it's good helping the one single shot deal its intended for massive amount of damage. But I still just wouldn't say it's a direct upgrade anyway because of how the way the Crystal Heavy functions, it's just not that good. But it's still fine to use. It's above average for certainty. Noah Crystal is pretty much the top 2 weapon in terms of elite crystal weaponry, besides obviously the Crystal Heavy. It's just a regular null crystal, but now it pierces 2 shields. So, obviously, yeah. Also locked down to the room. And then the last crystal weapon, which is like a hybrid of mine launcher technology and crystal weaponry. It doesn't cost ammo to fire, but it only pierces 2 shields, and it's actually able to do system damage kind of reliably, surprisingly. Most of the time, the mine launchers, even when the mine launcher is dedicated to fire, it doesn't actually deal that much system damage. But the shot launcher is able to do fires plus the lockdown, which if you remember from like the amber launcher, I think right here, the amber launcher was really good because of the lockdown plus the fire. Shot launcher is really good because of the lockdown plus the fire. And mine launchers are able to delay the fleet for missiles and storage checks. And the shot launcher is 5 missiles for one. Was it 1 fleet delay? Yeah, 5 missiles for 1 fleet delay, and it does not impact notoriety at all. Like it won't impact general. It won't impact crystal. It won't impact any kind of notoriety. So, C tier, average definitely. Mine launcher, which I'm actually no, it's B tier. I'll put B tier. I wouldn't be like super stacked to play this weapon very often, but it's definitely not bad. It can be very not synergistic with some other kind of projectile weapons, like for example, even against its other kind of crystal counterparts, like like the elite other kinds of counterparts for the crystal weaponry. But it's definitely not bad. So that concludes the crystalline weapon tier list. So in S tier we have the Elite Heavy Crystal 1, Elite Null Crystal. In A tier we have Heavy Crystal 1, Null Crystal, Elite Crystal 1, Burst Crystal 1, Elite Crystal Burst 2, and Elite Crystal Charger. In B tier we have the regular Crystal Burst 1, Crystal Burst 2, Crystal Charger, regular Crystal Heavy 2, Elite Scatter scatter crystal, or scattering crystal weapon, I don't know, whatever its name is, crystal flak, I guess. And then we got the elite crystal heavy 2, and then shot launcher. And then C tier we have the regular scattering crystal. Next we got the flak tier list. And flak weaponry is known as just being like overall a good support weapon for the other kinds of weapons. Not completely reliable on its own because of the shot radius, but still very good for what it does. It's certainly very powerful for beam weapons because of the every projectile of the flak weapon will arrive at the same time compared to something like a laser weapon, which not to say that you can't use laser weapons to support beams, but flak weapons are noticeably more powerful for that. Plus, they are efficient. Like the definition of flak is being efficient for what it is. So, up first we got the rad flak. 3 power for 4 shots that can deal a lot of crew damage and breaches. Definitely B tier. Wouldn't say it's like A tier just because it's like it's not super efficient, but it does hit heavy, as I've said like, I don't know, 5 times before so far in this tier list, but still a consistently okay, good weapon. Up next we got the chain flak. Another weapon that kind of suffers the fact that it's chaining. It's just like the flak weapon. Again, first volley matters, and the fact that it has an even more delayed first volley by actually a considerable amount, considering it's a flak weapon, is just not a really good thing for it. And like, granted, it could be a B tier weapon just because the regular flak 2 weapon would probably be about S or A tier. I just don't really think it's just not going to be that good in terms of just efficiency. The chain flak, I don't really like using it. I'd rather use something like, well, whatever else is in this tier list. So. And moving on, we got the flak charger, which is literally no different than the regular flak 2. It just fires same amount of projectiles, same shot radius, and each charge reloads at 1/3 of the speed of the regular flak. So you think of it like linear progression. By the time the flak charger has 3 shots ready, the the flak 2 has its volley ready. So. Without circumstance, it's just A tier. It's just the same thing as a flak 2. Fire flak is probably like another A tier weapon. 3 power, 4 shots, but inflicts 100% fire chance, and its shot radius is actually kind of small, I think. Well, it's not precise, but it's not as big as the other flak weaponry weapons usually have it as. So with that in mind, obviously inflicting that many fires for 4 projectiles is definitely really good. And its reload is quite quick too. It's like 16-17 seconds, which for flak weapon is actually quite good. Flak 1 is probably an A tier weapon. Definitely efficient, but I wouldn't say it's like super good yet. 1 power, 2 shots, moderate breach chance, and same thing, 1 hull, 1 system. Helps, but I wouldn't say it's efficient. Flak 2 on the other hand is kind of where we're going. Oh, that does remind me, now I think about it. The flak 1 and the flak 2 have the same reload speed, to keep that in mind. Flak 2 is just the best flak weapon as there is. Flak 3 kind of compares a little bit, but I still wouldn't say it's innately stronger just because of the power, the power cost of it. More synergistic for sure, the flak 3, but this is about flak 2 right now, so flak 2 provides just as much overall good power value for how 2 power, 3 shots, moderately good breach chance, and just it's a flak weapon by staple, so pretty good. Flak 3 is just another S tier weapon. As I said before, it doesn't compare 1-to-1 as in they're both easily S tier weapons. But I have seen some really devastating setups before where you do flak 3 plus a heavy laser. 5 projectiles, the flak 3, plus 2 heavy laser shots from the heavy laser 2. That's a lot of widespread system damage. And fast, too. The flak 3 fires pretty quick, too. Slower than flak 2, obviously, but still very, it's quick. Flak 4, on the other hand, is sadly not a very good weapon. It becomes very expensive to power now. It's got the same, 7 shots. Well, wait, is it 7? I don't know, it's 8 shots, that's right. 8 shots, but it's just a big shot radius, expensive to play, and just exponentially becomes worse to play overall anyway, so. I'm not too impressed by it. I'd rather run 2 flak 2s instead of the flak 4, despite it being the same power cost for even less shots, just because the flak 2s would sync better with each other and other weapons. Flak 4 fires quite slow as well. Golden Flak is a really good weapon for selling, but in terms of performance, it's just slightly above average. The only reason why it isn't an average weapon is because it sells for 90 scrap at a store. And with that in mind, it's just pretty much a good, just like scrap bomb to have, well, in the Swarmlands, Lanius Swarmlands, but yeah. It is interesting though, because the Golden Flak does, it's as a weapon functionally, its projectiles are much slower than the regular flak, but it gains another additional projectile, and its shot radius is smaller. Golden Flak 2 is only found inside the Nexus, and it only is applicable because of its selling value. As a weapon, it does not function, and if you're inside the Nexus, well, too bad, you're already getting 200 scrap per silver kill, while this weapon only sells with 140. So, D tier easily. Up next, we got, it's the worst flak weapon, which would incline it to be F tier, but it's not literally like an F tier weapon, so that's all I'm going to say. Ionic Flak, though, is more or less the same principle as like a Rad Flak would be. 3 power, 4 shots, deals ion damage along with the system damage and such. If you look at like the boss tier list, you can see how the toggle flaks are mostly ranking the same way these flaks do, just because of the way they function as flaks, right? Fire being superior to just dealing a bunch of ion damage, which may or may not even help you anyway. And then lastly, we have the preemptive flak. It's probably the best projectile-based preemptive weapon. Well, it's like the only one there is, but it's definitely not bad. It can help the first volley quite a bit. It's like 9 shots, kind of big shot radius, and it's actually pre-flak is actually pretty cheap. It's actually under 100 scrap to buy, so it's not too expensive to play. And again, it's a preemptive flak, so it's a preemptive weapon rather. So it'll cost no power to use, as well as charging immediately. So that's the flak tier list done, quite fast considering the other tier lists. This video have been taking considerably more time, considering like 2 hours. But S tier we have flak 2 and flak 3. In A tier we have the flak charger, fire flak, and flak 1. In B tier we have rad flak, golden flak 1. Ionic flak or electric flak, and then the preemptive flak. In C tier we have chain flak and flak 4, and then in D tier we have golden flak 2, or golden flak 4, I guess, because it's a golden. It's a flak 4, but it's golden. Up next, we got the ion/energy weapon tier list. Energy weapons are pretty close to the cousin of just regular ion weapons, so I'm fine with ranking them in the same tier list. Up first, we have the adaptive. Wait, is that the adaptive phaser? It is. Okay. Adaptive phaser. It can stack up to 5 ion damage, but it's only found in I guess 2 events. Definitely not bad, but just like it's a phaser weapon, so it can stack a lot of ion damage. Besides the fact it's literally chaining its ion damage. But I wouldn't say it's like comparable to like the other like consistently good chaining ion weapons. Well, I mean, there's not like good chaining ion weapons, but the regular ion weapons that are fast enough and deal enough ion damage to chain on itself, if you get what I'm saying. Conserve energy though is definitely an A tier weapon. It costs no power, fires a single energy shot, but it's actually quite fast. It's only like 12-second, maybe 13-second reload. Definitely not bad. Conserve ion though is just a little bit different. Instead of being an ion shot, it's now just an ion shot, regular ion shot. Slightly faster than the energy shot would be. I think it's like 2 seconds, fires 2 seconds quicker. And it's conservative, so it's 1 additional ion projectile. Definitely A tier in terms of ion weaponry. Up next, we got the disco phaser. It's no different than the regular like phaser 1 would be. And, well, I guess it would be A tier in that circumstance. And it just has a cool rainbow thing. When I was cropping these images to put into a tier list, I can't think of a good way of like actually making this look as if it was a rainbow, so I just stacked up vertically like this. It's kind of lazy, but we know this is the disco phaser. So up next we got the energy 1, which is like probably average-ish. 1 energy shot for costing 1 reactor power. It can never chain on itself just because of its reload compared to its ion damage dealt. Not very impressive. It gets average. It's not good by any real mean. Energy 2, on the other hand, is definitely like an easy A tier weapon. It's very efficient for 2 power, 2 shots, but it's with training, it's able to stack on itself because of a 10-second reload. Both shots dealing 1 ion damage, so you got like a net positive of like, I don't know, like 5 seconds, not 5 seconds, damn, 0.5 seconds for your weapon to stack its ion damage further, which makes the energy weapons really good in that circumstance, or just really any ion damage. The more effectively it can stack its chaining effect for ion damage to apply onto systems to remove more power, to last longer, it's considerably more better. Like, for example, out of all these weapons inside this tier list, Energy 2 really likes the Ion Dance, so. Ion 3, though, is kind of where the efficiency begins to fall off pretty rapidly. 3 shots, 3 power. It does, like, again, it does do the Ion stacking, but now you're sacrificing efficiency for just more Ion stacks, which I don't really care. I would rather have a good balance of the efficiency plus the Ion damage stacking versus just having a bigger gun that maybe kind of performs better. Next up, we got the chaining chaining energy weapon, which gets progressively faster for each shot. It's probably just another like equivalent to like Energy 3. It eventually, after chains, it does fire pretty quickly, and it's known as being one of the better chaining weapons in terms of damage output. But I still wouldn't say it's like super incredible in performance, because it's, well, like obviously an energy weapon, and it's not super efficient. Even though it's like eventually going to be really good at chaining, it's just like, the first 2 volleys matter, and this weapon is only effective after literally 3 volleys. So cardinally, it's just not like outperforming Energy 2. Charge energy, though, is like really bad. It's actually interesting because usually when you got like a charge weapon like this, and when it can stack multiple shots of itself to equivalent the its regular counterpart, like say for the Energy 3, the energy charger actually takes longer to charge than the standard Energy 3, and it's just like expensive as hell. It's 3 power for like shots that take less more time to fire, which gives you less uptime to stack more ion damage, if you get what I'm saying. The only real benefit that the energy charger does have is that once you inflict the 3 points of ion damage when you fully charge it up, you can then inflict, okay, you can just shoot 1 energy projectile at a time to increase or to sustain the the ion damage duration. But without that real concept happening all the time, which is, obviously the case in terms of energy weaponry, it's just not really that effective. Heavy energy, though, is like one of the best, well, is the best energy weapon. It's 2 power for 1 shot, but the 1 shot does 2 ion plus hull damage and the hull busts. I think it's actually called this might even be called a hull energy by some means, but I think it's just the heavy energy is easier to grasp. It does fire pretty quickly. It's able to stack on itself, and it's a very consistently good weapon. The only reason why I wouldn't say, the one circumstance why I would say it's not better than something like Energy 2 is because you got the 2 different shots knocking down shields versus just 1 projectile from the heavy energy. But in terms of how this heavy energy is performing, it's going to stack on itself almost anyway, so it's fine. I'm fine with using heavy energies. Energy Stunner is probably like a slightly above average weapon. I would say like low B tier, high C tier. It could be higher if it had fire chance. Energy weapons have fire chance, by the way, but if Energy Stunner had fire chance, you could see why it's good. It's basically Energy 2, except it now can inflict stuns, but it loses its fire chance. If you can inflict stuns plus the fire chance, it would be pretty good, because obviously, stunning enemies inside the fire to let the fire spread, plus fire deal damage to the crew themselves, would be quite strong, but that isn't the case for this weapon, so sadly it's not super efficient. Well, its base stats. There is a power efficient energy stunner, but it's well, obviously not on this tier list, and it's, well, only equipped on the weapon on the ships that start with it. So next up we have the Fire Ion Blast, I guess Fire Ion Blast, whichever you want to call it. Probably like a B tierish weapon. It's 2 power, 2 ion damage. It can inflict a fire if it hits directly into a room, and it's unable to stack on itself, unfortunately, just because it's got the long-ish cooldown for what its value is. But it's still okay for it to be a little inefficient, just because its fire chance is like really good. Well, it's 100% obviously, but yeah, it's good. It's fine. It's basically an energy weapon without having to deal hull damage just to deal a fire, if you get what I'm saying. The heavy ion is probably A-ish, B-ish tier. I would say B tier only because the heavy stunner exists. But heavy ion itself, 2 power, 3 ion damage, and it's able to chain its stack on itself in terms of ion damage. Definitely not bad. Ion Blast is like another C tier weapon. It's just like cost of reactor power. Granted, it can never the conservative ion, which is like equal about to the regular Ion Blast, can't stack on itself either. But now it also requires the conservative ion takes no power, while the Ion Blast takes 1 power, and it's quite literally a direct upgrade, the Ion Blast one compared to just the Blast one. I don't know, but it's average. It's not bad, but it's just average. Ion Blast, though, is just a direct-ish upgrade. I'll put C tier still, though, because it's just a regular Ion Blast. It's nothing impressive yet in terms of how the ion weapons progress. Ion Blast 2, though, is kind of where we're going to start to see a pretty good curve. 3 power is kind of expensive for one single ion weapon, especially considering it's able to stack ion damage on itself, obviously, but it's able to actually like reliably stack it versus just the other weapons not like stacking it super well. Ion Blast 4, though, or Ion Blast 3 as it is also called, I don't think this is that good of a. It's just not good. It's so expensive for firing ion projectiles that already stacking itself with 3 weapon power. You don't need to have this weapon at 4 power for it to stack ion damage. Yet it is, because, well, it's not very designed super well. Dedicating 4 weapon power just to deal slightly more ion damage over the course of a fight, where you don't really want to have that much chaining effect anyway, is just not that good. Up next, we have the Bio Ion, or the Rad Ion, or whatever you want to call it. It's an Ion Blast 2 that just deals crew damage, so just same tier. It's just not that different. I guess now it can biokill, and it causes breaches as well, so it's like, I guess it's a little bit better. So I guess in that case, yeah, biokilling does become an option with it. Well, reliably biokilling. You can always just like auto fire on an enemy's oxygen, and just like, you know, by the mathematical standpoint that anything is going to happen eventually, you can't just wait to oxygen biokill an enemy. But I don't know. I think this weapon is consistently able to biokill, assuming it's well able to reach the target. The only way the Rad Ion is able to deal crew damage is by if it directly hits the room. Unlike the other weapons where like you can stun the enemies inside the shield room, or apply affliction inside the enemies inside the shield room if they're just standing in there while shields are up, you actually have to directly hit them using the projectile itself to inflict the crew damage. Same thing goes for the breach chance, obviously, but I think we knew that already. Next up would be the Adaptive Ion, or just Chain Ion as it's known in vanilla. It was very, very buffed, but it's still like only slightly above average in terms of its performance. It stacks up to 5 ion damage, starts at 2, and it is able to obviously chain itself. It's the point of a chain ion, but yeah, I don't mind playing it that much, but I just don't think it's like something crazy that I'd put in A tier. I wouldn't want to buy this really if I had to make a choice. Ion Charger, though, is pretty much more or less the same point. It's just a much better energy charger, costs 1 less power for it to actually chain itself. And the ion charger is able to stack ion damage on itself when it's at full training because it's just able to auto fire. It's a one important thing to know. One important thing to note. Oh, I've been talking for 2 hours now. Throat's getting a little dry, but we only got 3 tier lists left after this one, so hopefully it shouldn't be too long, much longer. Longest tier list by far, but I mean that's inevitable, right? It's a weapon tier list. Up next, we got the Ion Charger 2. Less efficient, 3 power for only shooting 1 more ion projectile. Granted, it just shoot a little faster for each charge, but I just wouldn't really equate that into like more efficiency in terms of the ion stacking. I would rather just run a Ion Charger 1. Stunner 1 is just the significantly better, just regular Ion Blast. It's a regular Ion Blast, but now it does stuns. So, you know. Plus, the stunning inside the crew and the stunning the crew himself are actually pretty good, especially because Ions are gonna eventually not want to really care about shield layers. Once they, you know, stack their own ion damage enough. Stunning crew is really good. Plus, it's got if assuming it doesn't miss, it has an indefinite stun. So, another important thing to note. Stunner 2 is just the same-ish tier. Like it's got equal efficiency. It's like 1 more power, shoots faster, and inflicts a slightly longer stun. Even though, like realistically, if it had the exact same stun length, it wouldn't matter because it's firing the same you know, it's firing sooner, so it's stacking on itself anyway. But it's just same efficiency. I wouldn't say it's worse or better. A Stunner Charger, though, is just the same thing as a regular Ion Charger, just now it inflicts stuns. With that logic, it could be an S tier, but honestly, I don't think it's S tier comparable to something like the Preemptive Ion or the Heavy Energy. So for now, I think it's easily a comfortable A tier, but I wouldn't say it's better, straight up like a A tier better, or you know, a progressive A tier better than the Ion Charger one. Heavy Stunner, though, is a direct upgrade from the Heavy Ion. It's just now it deals now it can deal stun, same amount of power, same cooldown, same reload. It actually might be 1 second longer, but I mean for ion stacking, who cares? I mean, granted, every second counts, literally, but I mean it's still well able to chain on itself, so that's fine. Phaser 1 is easily an A tier weapon. It fires a little less off. It fires a little bit what do you call it? Less often, I guess. It's got a longer reload than the regular ion blasts, but it's able to pierce all shields. It can deal 1 ion damage to the shield layer and then whatever system you're targeting at. So at level 1, or just the first tier of the phaser family, it's able to chain on itself if you fire at shields consecutively. Phaser 2 is just like a more or less the same. More phasing projectiles. Well, not literally. It fires more often. It's able to chain ion stacks easier. Same efficiency. Not much else to say for it. Preemptive ion, though, is arguably one of the best weapons in the game that isn't a missile. It can immediately inflict 6 ion damage that cannot be missed. And it basically helps any weapon that relies on shields going down. For example, projectiles, right? It's incredibly powerful. It's actually pretty common too. It's not insanely rare, and it's quite cheap to use, like very cheap, in fact. So, yeah, it's quite crazy. And then last we have the dual ion, dual ion? No, it's the tri-ion. It shoots 2 power. Shoots 3 projectiles that can miss and have a shot radius. It's just a worse heavy ion, just straight up. It might even fire a little bit sooner, but the fact that it takes only 1 ion projectile to miss for it to lose stacks on itself, as well as just having a shot radius, it's just worse. So that concludes the ion/energy tier list. In S tier we have the preemptive ion, heavy energy. In A tier, we have the Conserve Energy and Conserve Ion, as well as a Disco Phaser, Energy 1, Energy 2, Ion Charger 1, Stunner Charger, or Stun Charger, whichever you want to call it, Heavy Stunner, Phaser 1, Phaser 2. In B tier, we have adaptive phaser, energy 3, chaining energy, energy stunner, fire ion blast or ion fire blast, whichever you want to call it, heavy ion, ion 3, yeah, ion 3, rad ion, chain ion or adaptive ion, ion charger 2, ion stunner 1, ion stunner 2. And in C tier, we have the energy 1, the energy charger, ion blast, or just the blast. Ion blast, I guess technically it's the second variant, the second tier progression of it. And then as well as the ion blast 4, and then finally the tri-ion, which will now conclude the ion tier list. And now we go on to the laser tier list, which might be the most in-depth one, to be honest. And considering how this pacing of this video is not looking like the fastest, I am not incredibly pleased, but hopefully I can run through a few of these weapons pretty quickly. So up first we have the adaptive laser, which is a 2-shot, 2-power weapon that can increase its damage output up to 3 damage per shot. Above average for certainty, but I wouldn't say it's like good. It's like not. I wouldn't say it's very good. I could say, because it is a little inefficient, and again it requires multiple volleys for it to be equivalent to something actually efficient. And like let's say within the time that like a heavy 2 would deal damage versus like an adaptive laser, the heavy 2 is just significantly outperforming it. So rad laser, or just the bio laser, is like probably the best projectile based crew killing weapon you could ask for. It also might be one of the best crew killing weapons overall. It pierces 1 shield, inflicts 45 crew damage, as well as breaches and has affliction for 1 reactor power, and it has like a 5-second cooldown. Very, very effective for what it can do. To be honest, I don't know why I have the bishop laser here, but it's like a really shit bio killing weapon. It fires in 1 second, every 1 second. It can inflict a 2-second stun and deals 15 or like 20 crew damage, one of those two. But it costs 3 reactor power, and by the time you find it inside your run by like sector 5 or 6, wherever the high brood worlds spawn, assuming you can actually get there using Kazak or whatever the case may be, it's just not a very good effective crew killing weapon. Like for example, if you want to like be a madman and use 3 rad lasers to crew kill versus using 1 bishop laser for its reactor power 3 and 3, or 3 versus 3 rather, you're gonna have a significantly better performance using the rad laser. Also, the bishop laser cannot pierce any shields. So, laser charger or charger / chainer is easy S tier. It's more or less a regular charge laser, but it's able to chain much sooner as well as charge. And at its final chain with training, it's able to fire at almost the speed of a Vulcan. Not quite as fast, but it's like probably it's like 0.4 seconds off, which is like incredible because it's a 1-power weapon that doesn't have a shot radius, and it's like very efficient for what it does. Chain laser though is probably like a CS tier weapon average. It was significantly buffed from vanilla, more or less just because of its 1 less reactor power. Its chaining properties are still, while very insignificant and not very pleased, or very impressive rather, or I guess you could be pleased about it, but I wouldn't. The chaining is another circumstance here where it's actually going to matter. You don't really want to have a weapon firing much less often as the chain laser could. Just the objective fact that chain laser just isn't super impressive in that regard, but it's not super bad, I can say. It's average. Charge laser 1 is probably A-ish, B-ish tier. I'd say A tier. 2 shots, 1 power. It's charge weapon. And in case you can't play it that effectively, it also sells for 32 scrap. So, efficient on a lot of regards. Charge 2 is another S tier weapon. It's 2 power for 4 shots. It fires pretty quickly, charges pretty quickly on each 4 of the charges. And it's overall just a really efficient weapon. It's not rare to find it, so you can actually like play multiple of them. Just having a full set of efficient laser weapons, I'm definitely not going to complain. Charge 2 though is like a B tierish weapon. This is kind of where it begins to fall off in efficiency. 3 power for only 5 shots, and its charge time is like about-ish the same, so it can charge up to 5 shots kind of fast, but I just like wouldn't say it's better anyway. It's just like slightly more tactical than something like a Burst Laser 3 would be, but still wouldn't say it's innately better. Up next we have the Conserve Laser, which is like a C tierish weapon. It's like a very long reload Burst Laser one. That's all there is to it. 16 seconds for 2 shots while requiring no weapon power. Up next we got Fire Starter, which is like a really one of the best well, I guess fire starting lasers literally, but overall just inflicting a good amount of chaos using the fires. Its downside is that it can't deal any direct crew damage, and it's 2 power for 2 shots, which is a little inefficient, but for 100% fire chance, I think it's pretty good. Frost Laser is another like B-ish, maybe even A. Like I would say high B, low A. It's 2 shots for 2 power, except that each shot can lock down the room, as well as inflict a 3-second stun on enemy crew, or just crew in general. If you have your friendly crew on that enemy ship by then, as well as it inflicts 15 more crew damage for each shot. For example, average laser shot will deal 15 crew damage for its 1 hull, while the Frost Laser does 30 crew damage for 1 hull. So it is much better at crew killing compared to the average laser, but I wouldn't say it's innately stronger. Frost Laser 2, which is 3 power, firing 4 shots, is not as efficient, obviously. While it does fire kind of quickly, it's a 16-second reload, which is only 1 second slower than something like a Hull Laser 2. It still isn't just that much more efficient than something like a Frost Laser 2. Granted, it's more efficient than running 2 different Frost Laser 1s. I still just wouldn't be that impressed using a Frost Laser 2 anyway. It's kind of expensive to play, and just, I don't know, I wouldn't be super ecstatic to have it anyway. I would say it's like the same tier as just Frost Laser 1, but it's just like not really anyway. You're not going to use multiple Frost Lasers to begin with, and as long as you're not like overlapping like power consumption, it's just not really going to be stronger anyway. I will say though that it is kind of efficient in the one way where it gains one reactive power but shoots 2 more projectiles. So that's one thing to keep in mind for it. Heavy Laser, no surprise, an S tier weapon. It's like also an S tier weapon, maybe even like low A, but like still a highly proficient weapon in vanilla, and obviously no surprise in multiverse. Higher status effects surprisingly in multiverse, while the overall effectiveness of it being dealing more hull and system damage for a really short reload is pretty good. Heavy Laser 2 is another S tier weapon. 2 power, 2 heavy laser shots, 13-second reload, and really good status effects. Not bad. Heavy Laser 3 is kind of going to be starting to fall off. Still decent, like it definitely hits hard. Like three heavy laser shots is not like something you can ignore in terms of damage output, but it's now 3 power to use and kind of a longish reload, and it's, unless you have like a really good way of removing other kinds of shields, like something like a flak 3 or whatever the circumstance may be, it's not really going to be doing that much on its own. Granted, it's 3 shots for 3 heavy laser shots, so if you have at least 1 other projectile, it's able to do something, but I still just wouldn't be that impressed of it if it's like, alone or just not supported by many other things. Chinning heavy laser is just more or less the same power. It's got the chaining property, which is kind of a downside, because the heavy laser is actually known for being really fast firing, and because it's fast firing, it can be used to fight or inflict damage on the enemy before they're able to inflict any on yours. However, the chaining heavy is it's a heavy laser that takes slightly longer to fire at first, and that's just still plenty good. Heavy Pierce is just a heavy laser with 2-second longer cooldown, and it's able to pierce 1 shield. It loses fire chance but gains 20% breach chance and more stun chance as well. Heavy Stun is another a lot of S tier weapons for the laser category, but It's a heavy laser, slightly longer cooldown, but it inflicts a heavy stun and just big breach chance. Heavy stun is also really good at crew killing because, well, besides the stun chance, the breach chance can also be quite appreciated in the circumstance where it actually matters. Hull Laser 1 is more or less the same tier as like a charge 1 would be. It's definitely efficient, but I wouldn't say it's like crazy yet compared to something like its Hull Laser 2 counterpart. It can be used to inflict 4 hull damage using 2 hull busting projectiles, but overall it's not like that much more efficient than something else would be. Hull Laser 2 on the other hand is significantly buffed. The main problem Hull Laser 3 had in vanilla was the fact that it wasn't really efficient for its reactor power cost for its amount of damage it did, like 3 for 3, and it wasn't really fast. But now it's got quicker unload or quicker reload, I guess we can call it, and it's got 2 power for 3 shot reactor. No, 2 reactor power for 3 heavy laser. 3 hull laser shots. Higher breach chance than its Hull 1 counterpart, and I really consistently see myself using this weapon pretty often. Like it's really common and it's very effective. So Hull Laser 3 though is kind of the same principle as a Heavy 3 had from before. It's starting to fall off in efficiency, and like 4 hull shots is definitely not something you can ignore super easily, like like 3 heavy shots would be. But I just wouldn't say it's innately stronger anyway. It's just efficiency is down, and it's 3 reactor power is not really that easy to juggle, and it's you're better off using a hull 2 plus a hull 1, in conjunction with each other. For besides the fact it's another projectile, it's also faster, and the overall amount of breaches you're gonna get for each shot is gonna be higher. Chaining hull is a little bit worse than the regular hull 1. It just has a chaining effect now. And I guess it does fire eventually. Its 3rd chain starts to fire kind of fast, but again the first volley matters, and for a hull busting weapon that's going to be firing even slower because of its chaining properties, I just wouldn't rank it I wouldn't rank it as an upgrade. Basic laser is just a basic laser. It's just 1 shot, 1 power, Burst Laser is a direct upgrade, probably an A tier amount of upgrade. It's 1 power for 2 shots, slightly longer reload, but it's literally a 1 for 2 ratio. It's much better than a basic laser would be. Burst Laser 2 is also another S tier weapon. 2 power for 3 shots, while only having 1 more second longer of cooldown or reload compared to the Burst Laser 1 counterpart. It's just more or less like a hull laser that fires sooner. A more bursty laser, I guess you can call it. Burst 3, though, is kind of the same tier as maybe the C tier. Only reason why it wouldn't be a B tier is because the Charge 3 is just a better upgrade for it, as well as like the Heavy 3 and whatever. 3 power 5 shots is definitely not bad, but it's just the application of it when it comes to how it performs in game with the five independent shots for 3 power and 18-second cooldown. It's just not really that impressive overall. Burst Laser 4 is like a D tier weapon. It's so expensive to play, and it's just annoying to use. Its only real good redeemable quality being that it can sell for a lot of scrap. Light Laser 1 is like a C-ish, maybe even D-ish tier weapon. As I said before, way back when I did the boss weapon tier list, the Renegade boss weapon tier list, light laser charger gained a lot of value because he had multiple light laser charges, or multiple light laser shots. However, the light laser 1 doesn't do that. It doesn't even fire fast enough for it to take down multiple shield layers. In fact, it only takes down 1 consistently. It's able to deal kind of a moderately good breach chance. I think it's 30% breach chance, but it does no system damage. Not very efficient for what it does. Light 2 is even worse though. It's 2 power for even faster firing light laser shot, but still no system damage. Slightly higher breach, but again, I'm not appreciated. I'm not really I don't appreciate light weaponry very well, so it's not very good. It's quite bad, in fact. If it's all you can use, it's all you can use, but it's not very effective. Matchbox, or just the special loot of the regular heavy starter, fire starter. It gains 1 extra projectile but loses the guaranteed fire chance, which means it basically becomes a burst laser 2 that can deal an 80% fire chance. Only reason why it obviously isn't an S tier weapon is because it's quite rare to find. Brood Stronghold, as well as just the its reload is slightly longer. I think it's like 2 seconds more. It's 2 more seconds of reload, and I don't know. It just isn't reliable as like a burst laser 2 could be anyway. 3 shots, yeah, it's important to know, but still, I just, the fire chance isn't what's making it not S tier. It's more just the rarity of it and the fact that it's just not an upgrade to what Burst Laser 2 is anyway. So, next up we get the Riftwaker .5, which is an event weapon inside the Hector Mega Market. It's just like a better Vulcan. It just can charge up much sooner. Its final charge fires much better than a Vulcan would, and yeah, that's kind of all there is to it. I would use it over the Vulcan. I will say that. Particle laser is another like almost S tier weapon, but it does need support. It's a 1 power weapon that just shoots 3 shots, each one dealing no hull damage, but does system damage and pretty high fire chance, considering it's a fast firing weapon that does 3 individual shots. It's basically it's kind of like the particle beam version of lasers, except this time around it can actually support your other projectile weapons pretty easily as well, if you're able to pierce that many shields. Like, for example, if you have exactly 3 shots to get through a 3 shielded enemy, but then you have a particle laser to deal damage, you can definitely pull off some good stuff with using the particle laser. 3 system damage plus the fire chance. It's firing under 10 seconds. It's definitely not bad. I'm not going to be ranking the Gatling lasers, by the way, for obvious reasons. Up next, we got the Particle Laser 2. Slightly less efficient. 1 extra power, you gain 2 projectile lasers, 2 particle laser shots. Higher fire chance, slightly larger shot radius, but again, I'd rather just run 2 independent particle accelerators compared to running 1 big particle accelerator 2. Or maybe even the calling it just a particle laser, depending on whatever you want to call it. But in any case, still good, but I wouldn't say it's an upgrade to the particle laser 1. Next up we get piercing, pierce laser. Basically just the humanoid laser equivalent of what a crystal burst 1 would be. Much higher breach chance, slightly longer reload than what you would expect it to be, but still pierces 1 shield, so it's definitely average. Pierce 2 is sadly a kind of a downgrade to it. It has the same interesting kind of gimmick as the Frost Laser 2 would have. For 1 extra additional reactor power, it does now shoot 2 more piercing shots, but it's much longer cooldown. It's like a 5-second more longer cooldown, and it's just like not efficient in what it does. Granted, it does get through 4 shield layers, but on its own. But again, I wouldn't really bank on 3 weapon power only getting 4 shields anyway. That's just the simplest fact. Vulcan is an easy C-ish, D-ish tier weapon. I'll put a D tier just because it's a fucking Vulcan. Vulcan was more or less pretty buffed from vanilla, considering vanilla it was just a complete meme weapon. In Multiverse, it's more usable, but still not very impressive. 3 reactor power for 1 shot that's going to eventually change to be kind of fast, but at the same time not really. It's got the shot radius that basically balances it to not be okay, it's actually pretty good. It's not a very impressive weapon. It's probably actually, I'll be honest, it's probably a C tier weapon. It's average, but I'm not really a fan of it. It's not really what I see in a good laser weapon. Up next, we got the Zenith, or lastly, rather, we have the Zenith laser. It's just the new gen equivalent of a heavy laser. 14 seconds, 1 shot that deals 4 hull damage, 4 system damage, very high breach chance, and very high fire chance. So that's the laser weapon completes. Up in S tier, we have the rad laser, chaining / charge laser, charge laser 2, heavy 1, heavy 2, chaining heavy, heavy pierce, heavy stun, heavy hull 2, burst laser 2, and zenith. In A tier, or zenith, however you want to pronounce it. In A tier, we have particle laser 1, charge laser 1, hull 1, burst laser 1, and matchbox. In B tier, we have frost laser 1, adaptive laser, charge 3, fire starter, heavy 3, hull laser 3, chaining heavy, chaining laser, rift breaker 0.5, and particle laser 2, and then finally pierce laser 1. In C tier, we have chaining laser, conserve laser, frost laser 2, basic / defense laser, burst laser 3, light laser 1, pierce 2, and Vulcan. And then finally in D tier, we have the bishop laser, the burst laser 4, and then the light laser 2. And then the second to last weapon. Wait a minute. Okay, just making sure. The second to last weapon tier list we got is the transport loot. This is, you find these in the unique faction sectors, like for example, clan, coalition, cultist, blah blah blah. Moving on. We'll also have math loot here because I didn't really know where else I could put it besides renegade bosses, and Cali the calculator isn't exactly a renegade boss. Like he's a renegade but not really a boss, so just put him here in transport loot. He's more or less a transport in himself anyway. So first up, we got the civilian burst laser. Definitely an A tier weapon. It's just a much better burst laser. -1 second cooldown, gains a breach chance, and then severely increases the existing fire chance of it. Very powerful for what it does. The clan rad laser is easy S tier, as it would expect it to be. It gains a system damage, which is huge for a crew killing weapon, as well. It deals 15% more, not 15%, but 15 more crew damage, as well as a higher breach chance. Up next, we got the Coalition, I forgot how you pronounce the missile itself. It's the stunning missile. It gains a cloaking projectile, so it can't be shot by defense drones. It's got a shorter cooldown and a higher breach chance. It's a missile, so obviously S tier. Cultist torch is probably one of the best loots in the game. It's a piercing torch that pierces all shield layers. Gains 100% fire chance. It's a -1 second cooldown and a much longer beam length. It's pretty much one of your go-to weapons in terms of killing Sylvan. Well, killing multiple Sylvans if you're that murderous. Up next, we got the Dustbringer Heavy Energy. Gonna rank pretty high, but quite not S tier, despite the Heavy Energy being in S tier earlier, just because of what exists in current S tier. Interesting because this actually is the only real transport loot that I haven't had much experience with. Mostly because it's a fucking Dustbringer weapon drop, and I don't want to deal with Dustbringers when I play my game, but I think from what I understand from the physics of it, it works like a plasma weapon because the weapon itself gains the ability to deal system damage, as well as a breach chance and a shorter cooldown, and maybe even a higher fire chance if I remember correctly. So it's very good, obviously, but if it didn't have plasma capabilities, I would put it in B tier, but because it does, it's a comfortable A tier. Even then, it's still heavy energy, so it's still plenty fine. Rancier is another A tier transport drop. It's just a slightly worse Havocizer, and obviously a significantly better Rancier. A quicker reload while being able to do system damage, which again is huge, and guaranteed breach chance compared to the regular 80%, which doesn't really matter. But the system damage is what makes it shine. Heavy 2 or Federation Heavy 2 is one of the best. Another really powerful transport drop. It's got the it gains 15 more crew damage, inflicts a 6-second stun, and fires 1 second sooner. It's basically just a heavy laser. It's Heavy Laser 2 that it's innately just buffed in multiple regards. You can also, for Federation loot, you can find 2 of them. You can find one at the Memorial, and you can find one at the Federation Transport. So you can have 2 independent Heavy Laser 2 Federation Heavy Laser 2s, which is quite powerful. Up next, we got the Free Manta Stunning Bomb. for surprisingly enough, despite it being an actual bomb weapon, it's actually not ranking super high, simply because it's not really effective in terms of the other kind of bomb weaponry we're going to be having coming up, also as well just missile weaponry. It gains the ability to deal 1 system damage, shorter cooldown, and I think it also gains even a breach chance a little bit, but still like definitely good, and it's, it's a stun bomb, so it's still like above average for certainty, but I wouldn't like rank it super high just because it's not really as effective as some other kinds of border support missile weapons could be. Up next, we got the Knights, the Knight Corbin, which is accessible via the Royal Nebula. It's just a better Corbin by a lot. It gains a fire chance, it gains beam length and beam speed, as well as dealing more crew damage and inflicting a 6-second stun upon when it crosses a trail of somebody. And its affliction chance remains. Well, it has 100% affliction chance, but its affliction causation remains the same. Up next, we got the Loot Lanius chaining flak that becomes even better at chaining. Unfortunately, it's still a chain flak, which is, C tier. It's a direct upgrade to the regular chaining flak. It gains 20% more breach chance, as well as its immediate cooldown doesn't change, but it's what do you call it? The chaining effect for each time it fires is more versatile. I think it gains like 1 second better for each chaining. So eventually, after its 3rd chain, it fires much sooner, but still wouldn't rank it super high anyway. The Leech flak is very good. It's just a better flak. It fires 1 second sooner. It gains the ability to deal fires and as well as breaches. Well, it has breach chance already, but it improves upon breaching. Up next, we have the Lost Sun mine launcher, which is another C tier weapon. It is considerably better than a regular mine launcher would be. Its mines projectile much faster across the screen to reach the enemy. It gains it gains a stun as well as a shorter cooldown. Unfortunately, it's still a mine launcher that doesn't really deal reliable system damage besides fires, which is still okay, but it's average, but I still wouldn't say it's super good. Hades, on the other hand, is another insanely powerful weapon, especially the Lost Sun Hades. It gains another point of system damage for, basically 2 power, 3 hull damage, 4 system damage. 100% fire chance, as it usually is. It gains a stun as well as a shorter cooldown. It's immensely powerful for what it is. It might have to be nerfed, to be honest, but again, all missiles have to be nerfed one way or another anyway, so. Up next, we have the Mantis bomb launcher, which is just a regular small bomb that just gains 15 more crew damage and fires sooner. Oh, it also gains some fire chance, or higher fire chance. Light laser, on the other hand, the Mantis light laser Mark II is probably a D tier weapon. It's just I guess for light lasers specifically, it fires 0.5 seconds sooner, which is, well, noticeable, obviously. But it's still a light laser. I'm not going to rely on it, and blah blah blah. It's not good. Compared to the Mantis transport, it will drop either one of these. Same thing as the Lost Sun transport. It'll be either the mine launcher or the Hades. If you get the Hades, you win the game. And for the Mantis transport, you're feeling good if you win the bomb launcher, and you feel kind of shitty if you achieve the light laser. Up next, we have the next set of weapons being Callie's. Well, not really the next set, but the intervening set of weaponry being Callie's drops, the math loot. Up first, we have the adder, which is like more or less a good upgrade to the adaptive laser. It gains a longer cooldown by like 1 or 2 seconds, but it's able to chain up to 10 hull damage for wait, no. Is it 10? No, it's 5. 5 hull damage for each laser shot. Stacking one full hull point for each chain it has. Able to inflict up to 10 hull damage for if both shots land consecutively. So pretty good, obviously above average, but I wouldn't say it's super good. Subtractor is another like D tier weapon. It gains a longer cooldown. And each bomb is able to deal 225 crew damage, which is enough to kill, well, literally any crew that have under that much health. But it now requires 2 missiles to fire, and arguably it could be C tier if you have the ammo replication, but I feel like you're actually better off just using the standard bio bomb anyway, and even then the bio bomb is average at best, so still wouldn't be not super impressed by it. Up next we have the multiplier, which is the charge flak. It gains a larger shot radius, but a significantly quicker charge up speed for each individual flak shot. Probably about like C tier, again average. It's a good alternative to knocking down silver and shield lasers because of how many shots it's going to be able to shoot before, well, he's a concern. It's kind of like what a light laser could be, but it's not because it's, well, it's able to deal system damage effectively, and it's fire. It doesn't actually, at least like mathematically, like Cali mathematically does fire a bit better than light laser ever would. Up next we have the divider, which is a Grisarm that gains another shield pierce, higher breach chance, but much longer cooldown by like 3 or so seconds. Still probably about B tier though at the end of the day. It's just the extra shield pierce does help a lot for considering it's literally a beam weapon, and the breach chance is quite good as well. Up next we have Equalizer, which is another really powerful weapon. It's basically a preemptive ion that becomes a 15-second ion that's able to deal 7 ion damage. And which is actually not even mattering anyway, because the point of the pre-ion was to inflict that much the immediate 6 ion damage, the unavoidable 6 ion damage, once the rest of your volley is ready. And since the Equalizer charges in about 15 seconds, which is the average for most other projectile-based weapons, Equalizer is still plenty good. For 7 ion damage as well, by the way. Also inflicts a stun and a fire if it hits directly. Well, inflicts a stun, but fire if directly. Percentage is another like D-ish, maybe even probably D-ish tier. I can't remember the exact debuffs or what makes it weaker, but the upsides being it gains higher fire and breach chance, like much higher, as well as maybe an additional mine projectile itself. But it has a much larger like shot radius, especially for like a mine launcher standpoint. Next we have greater than, which is just like a missile, like standard missile. It's more or less a Nixon launcher that instead of it loses the ability to hull bust, but it gains 1 flat up hull damage plus system damage, and it's still reliable for being 2 power, and it's like what 15-second cooldown, definitely not bad. A missile, so B tier-ish, maybe even A tier. So now returning back to the regular transport loot, we have the Militia Burst Laser. It's just a much more bursty Burst Laser 3, or Burst Laser 2 rather. It fires 2 seconds sooner and deals like 10% more fire chance maybe. The main point of it being it has a much... usually the transport loot will only decrease the average cooldown by about 1 or 0.5 seconds for its cooldown, or to reload speed. But the Burst Laser 2 for the Militia decreases it by 2. So it's firing like literally 2 seconds sooner than the average Burst Laser 2 would fire, which is quite noticeable. Up next we have the Rebel Charge Laser 2. Easy, oh wait, that's the wrong one. Easy S tier weapon. It's just another Charge Laser 2 that gains breach chance, higher fire chance, and it has a 0.5 second reload reduction on each charge. So it's pretty much a upgrade from the regular Militia. Like, it's funny enough, the Militia Burst Laser 2 is an upgrade from the regular Burst Laser 2, while the Charge Laser 2 is, well, besides the fact it's an upgrade from the regular Charge Laser 2, it's also a direct upgrade from the regular Militia Burst Laser 2. So, with that in mind, we can go on to the Rock or Thoracosy Hermes missile, transport missile, Hermes, whatever you want to call it, blah blah blah. Another S tier weapon. It's just a Hermes missile, minus 1 second reload speed or reload time. Gains a massive boost to status effects, so it's like 60% breach and like 90% fire, and also a bit longer of a stun chance. And then next we have the Shell Hull Laser one. It's more or less just a regular Hull Laser one, to be honest, which I might put even in C tier, but because it's literally not any worse than it otherwise would be from a Hull Laser 1 standpoint, it can just stay in B tier. The projectiles travel much faster, like on the speed of like the Never Miss does, and it has a much higher breach chance, if not guaranteed. I can't remember the exact number, but it's quite large. It's also minus 1 second cooldown, or reload. Next up, we have the slug transport loot, which is the crew kill beam. That's just better crew killing. I guess C tier, considering the other kind of crew killing capabilities we have for these weapons up top. I think it gains a much higher breach chance. Its affliction capabilities are actually increased. The enemies will repair and move slower, as well as be more afflicted by stunning. And I mentioned the reload speed. Oh, I increased the breach chance by like 30%, I believe. So not bad. It's definitely obviously an upgrade, but compared to the other capabilities that these weapons have for dealing havoc and just crew killing in general, I wouldn't say it's that comparable. Now, the last two we have for the transport is the Zoltan Pike Beam, which is kind of just a regular pipe beam. It's fire. It basically becomes a scythe itself while still remaining the pike properties. 1 second shorter cooldown, or cooldown. I guess. Yeah, I'm just gonna embrace it at this point. It's a cooldown, and it gains a massive boost to its beam speed and a slight boost to its beam length. So definitely C tier. Lastly, we have the secondary Zoltan loot drop, which is the Lucerne, or the hull beam. Easy A tier, almost S tier if it was well, buffed in one way or another, but it's strong enough, don't get me wrong. It gains the ability to deal another point of system damage, shorter reload, as well as increased breach chance. Unsurprisingly, a lot of this transport loot, the good transport loot, ranks pretty high, but again, that's because it's, well, literally good weapons that are buffed even more so, like for example, small bomb or Hades missile. But reading off the list, we have S tier, cultist loot torch, cultist torch, Lost Sun Hades, clan rad laser, coalition stunning missile, Federation loot Federation heavy 2, Cowley's equalizer, Rebel charge 2, and Rock Hermes. In A tier, we have the civilian burst 1, Dustbringer heavy energy, Dynasty, Rancier, Mantis, Hive Mantis, small bomb, the Cowley's greater than, Militia Birth Laser 2, and then the Zoltan hull beam. In B tier, we got the Free Mantis stunning bomb, or stun bomb, Knighted, Corbin, Leech flak, Callie's adder, Callie's divider, and then the shell hull 1. In C tier, we have the Lanius chain flak, the Lost Sun mine launcher, the Callie's multiplier, or I think it's multiplier from its name, in the Slug's crew kill beam, and then the Zoltan's pike beam. And finally, in D tier, we have the Hive Mantis light laser, Callie's subtractor, and Callie's percentage. And then last but not least, we have missiles. It had to happen, right? Missile launchers somewhere, and I don't know why the Vine launcher is here, to be honest. I'm not going to rank it, but it's here anyway for like moral support. One thing to mention real quick is that obviously in an overall multiverse tier list, these weapons would rank at about probably S tier at the lowest. The worst missile of this list would probably rank about B tier, but in terms of a missile tier list, we're going to see some pretty big variation. But just granted, every single weapon in this tier list right now is pretty overpowered and should be nerfed to the ground, just to say the least, but that's multiverse for you. So up first, we have Lido missiles, which is probably about B-ish, maybe C tier. 1 power, 1 system damage, 1 hull damage. Okay stats, like low but still fine status effects for breach that's fire, as well as stun. Up next, we have Onimus, which is an easy A tier weapon. 1 power still, but gains 2 hull. 2 system damage, well, not gaining it compared to Lido, but now it has 2 hull damage, 2 system damage, hull busting capabilities to inflict 4 hull damage if you care to, as well as charging within 10 seconds. with pretty moderate status effects. Up next, we have Hermes, an S tier weapon. Another upgrade to the Artemis, 2 power for 3 hull damage, 3 system damage, hull busting capabilities, accuracy modifier, which the Artemis had, but the Leto did not have. What else is there to say? Oh, status effects have been buffed considerably for it, and it's still very effective to use. Ares is more or less just an average weapon. It's very expensive to play. It hits heavy for like one individual missile, but at the same time it doesn't really. For example, Ares is 4 power for dealing 4 hull plus 5 system damage, while if you ran 2 Hermes missiles for the same equal amount of weapon power, 4 and 4, you'll be able to deal 6 hull damage and 6 system damage, as well as charging much faster. Plus the hull busting if you care to. But moving on from that, we have the Rad missile, which is probably another A tier weapon. Only reason why it would be worse than Hermes is, it doesn't have the hull busting and instead has a really high breach chance, along with being able to annihilate a lot of crew using its crew damage. Very powerful missile, but obviously wouldn't say it's really sophisticated at crew hull killing. Hull killing as much as other weapons could be. Up next, we have Pegasus / Swarm, from what vanilla standpoint is. Just above average. Wouldn't say it's A tier. 1 power for 3 individual missiles that could deal up to the same effective damage as a Hermes, assuming it doesn't have any hull busting capabilities. Moderate status effects, and I will say moderate this time because despite it being low for the Pegasus, you have 3 different missiles rolling the same status effect multiple times. So one thing to keep in mind for that. It does charge pretty fast. Again, there's 1 reactor power for 3 missiles. It's basically just a charger missile weapon. Hydra, on the other hand, is definitely another average missile. It's not super effective, but I wouldn't say it's like weak either. It's just like it's a 3 power, 5 missiles, and doesn't really charge any sooner than the other missiles would anyway, so it's average. Up next, we got the Nyx at above average. It's more or less just a slightly weaker Artemis, but it does gain the ability to not have to need defense scramble for it to function well. It can hull bust still for 4 damage if you want to use it like that, and it's still pretty good bore support for what it does. Energy missiles are like average. It's not like super impactful. It's actually another event weapon, as other weapons in this tier list have made an appearance in. But it's able to inflict ion damage as it passes through a enemy shields, despite it being a missile weapon that's more sophisticated in dealing hull damage. It does, I think it's 3 hull damage that can equate to 6 if you have hull busting properties. Well, if you do use the hull busting properties. Very high fire chance, and it's kind of expensive to use, but I still would be fine with using it if I could actually find it. You can find it by using Tony plus Symbiote to track down the hackers that trolled them by that's right, Tony and Symbiote to track down the hackers that trolled them both. But otherwise, I wouldn't really bother trying to get the weapon actively. Momus is probably the staple of what's wrong with Multiverse. A free-to-use missile, a free-to-use 2 damage missile that charges really fast. I mean, yeah, that's all there is to it. Solar Kernel, now into the, not quite yet into the Kernel weapons, but now we can start on the Kernel weapon progression. Solar Kernel charges, it's kind of like the alternative to the Hades missile, in my opinion. It does less immediate damage. It's 2 hull damage, 2 system damage. No hull busting capabilities, but it has ammo replication as well as the guaranteed fire chance. So I'll put it probably about A-ish, maybe then close to S tier. I'll put probably S tier just because compared to the other Kernel weapons that are going to be in this list, I wouldn't put it at the same tier as something like Kernel 2. On the other hand, though, Kernel 1 is an insanely powerful weapon. 1 power for 2 Kernel shots that can deal high breach chance, and they charge 10 seconds, I think, maybe 9, but probably 10 if I remember correctly. Elite Kernel 1 is probably on the same page as Momus is in terms of how broken it is. It normally the elite weapons don't gain that much of a benefit compared to the regular like standard weapons. Like for example, the crystal weapons gain a shield pierce, but in terms of damage output, they didn't do that. They didn't increase that much at all, really, besides shield pierce. However, the Elite Kernel 1 reduces its cooldown by 3 seconds. And now has 50% ammo replication. Oh, and then, can't forget about the stun chance. Yeah, it's a little tiny bit broken, to say the least. I could honestly give the same amount of dialogue as I gave the Royal Payload, but I'm kind of over the joke of just being stupid for my tier list, so let's just rank everything as it is. Up next, we have the Colonel Mark II. Probably another A tier weapon. Colonel Mark II was kind of considerably buffed. Its reload was increased from like 12 or 13 to 16, so like a plus 3 second cooldown. But it's still got the ammo replication and can fire 3 individual Colonel shots, dealing 60% breach chance. Still pretty good in that regard, and I definitely wouldn't regret buying it or using it, especially if I'm kind of running low in supplies and I have nothing else to really rely on at the time. Elite Colonel 2 is Elite Colonel 2 is pretty much not S tier material, despite it being a direct upgrade to the regular Colonel 2. Obviously, it just performs the same. It doesn't have a cooldown reduction or reload reduction. Only thing it really gets is the ammo replication plus stun chance. Up next, we have the Chain Colonel, which is another like average weapon. It's really expensive to use on multiple factors: reactor power, ammo replication, and the chaining effect of the Colonel is kind of shit anyway. It's just not a very high performing Colonel weapon. Elite Chain Colonel is definitely better though. It's got the ammo replication, which definitely helps the constant Colonels firing a bunch, and it just gains the stun chance, as well as just being an overall better Chain Colonel. I'm definitely fine using Elites, but the regular I probably wouldn't bother. Charger Colonel though, it's another A tier weapon. It's just basically a Colonel 1 that's actually put it S tier because it's a Colonel 1 that's able to do individual shots. Only reason why it'd be weaker is because it's got slightly weaker breach chance, but honestly not by much at all. It's like 30% compared to 80%, and the whole point of the weapon is because it's a missile, not because of fucking breach chance. So enough is enough of that. Up next, we got the Elite Charge Colonel, which is obviously pretty good for what it does. It's just a direct upgrade from the regular Charge Colonel. Not like immensely superior, but obviously an upgrade, and it's not a side grade, not a downgrade, so it's going to go in S tier along with its partner. Heavy Colonel is one of the weapons that compares to Payload yet again. It's funny how many broken missile weapons there are. It's almost as if missiles are broken. Heavy Colonel is 2 power for 3 damage. It has hull busting capabilities and guaranteed breach chance, as well as ammo replication. It's more or less just a Hermes missile that fires like at the same reload speed, but doesn't do fires anymore, and just guaranteed to breach. So it's pretty much just as powerful, if not a little bit more powerful, if the aim of the game is breaches. And obviously, Elite Heavy Colonel, if I don't really have to talk about it anymore, it's just Heavy Colonel that's elite. Particle missile is probably a D tier weapon. It's not very good in terms of the missile weaponry. It's able to pierce super shields, which is good to know, which is actually like a very unique capability compared to most other weapons, especially as missiles go, because missiles sometimes struggle with piercing super shields because of their reload speed. Obviously, there's imperfections like there being the fucking Artemis and the Colonel weapons in S tier, but otherwise, it's like the particle missile is just not very impressive. 3 power for 6 system damage with guaranteed fire is definitely not bad, but you're better off just using regular other broken missile weapons than trying to use a particle missile. I will say though that there is an alternative to the a power efficient alternative to the particle missile, being on the prototype B on the page 1 of your multiverse save profile. It's quite good then, because obviously it's 2 power for the same amount of effectiveness. But for the current majority of the game scenarios, you're going to be dealing with a 3 power missile that's not very good. Hades, on the other hand, is a very powerful weapon. 2 power, 3 hull damage, 3 system damage, inflicts quite a bit of fires, well, like literally 100% fire chance, and has the accuracy buff as most other regular missile weapons do. Colonels don't have don't have accuracy mods, by the way, in case you didn't know that, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but in case you didn't. Hades is like one of the perfected border support weapons, assuming your crew don't literally evaporate by the use of fire, or as if the enemy can be affected by fire. But it's still overall pretty like I don't mind using Hades for hull killing, and I definitely don't mind using it for border support. So, and then last but not least, we have the stun missile. It's more or less just the alternative to the bio missile. It's just, instead of dealing a bunch of crew damage, it's just now like stunning them a bunch. Surprisingly, a equal amount of a breach chance, but now it just doesn't one shot some crew. That's all there is to it. And then I guess I will rank this just to drag on a little bit more. I've already gone for probably 3 hours by now, so let's do the full deed and just rank the mine launcher. C tier, obviously, because it's just a mine launcher. Interesting enough, you can have one fleet boost one fleet delay for completely free, excluding the notoriety gain. Obviously, you will still gain general notoriety, but at that point, if you're using a mine launcher to get more jumps, you don't really care about meeting Tully to begin with. But that's besides the point. Vine Launcher would probably be significantly better in terms of exploration if it had a 2 fleet delay for the free, but obviously that would be a little too strong for a mine launcher capable weapon, so it's only 1 fleet delay, which is still fine. For free, well, for no resource cost, it's good. It's not for free because obviously the Tully will get mad at you, but that's besides the point. That's about it. That was 10 tier lists. And I don't know how to feel about doing all of this. I just closed something, but it's fine. We did the tier list. Yeah. That was a lot, but I'm glad this time I actually took the time to methodically do this. I kind of rushed towards the last hour stretch, but at the same time, we got everything done. All 10 tier lists. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. I just didn't have a good reason to, and I'm talking faster, even faster right now because I don't want my footage to corrupt, which has been a problem recently. So I thank you everyone for watching to the end. I really, really appreciate it, especially for this kind of longish video that doesn't have much content in it in terms of FTL run standpoint. Especially in the contrast from my usual Forgotten Race content, which I will definitely be returning to after this. After this video gets uploaded. I will say though, after this video gets uploaded, daily uploads will kind of stop for a little while, not too long obviously, as I predicted that I wouldn't be able to do daily uploads for super long, but that was kind of the point of the daily uploads anyway, was to get me back on my feet instead of forcing myself to play the game. Now I can actually play the game at a reasonable pace without having to worry about either A, daily uploads, or B, burning myself out from playing the game, but that's all besides the point. Thank you for watching to the end. I really appreciate everyone that watched here. I said that already, but I can't say it enough. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about my tier list, if you think I misranked something, if you think I did rank something very well, comment below. And that's all I got for you for today. And I had a lot to share for today, so the like button would look really juicy today, in my opinion, but. I can't exactly like my own video, but this is besides the point. So, take care, and I'll see you around. And, have a good night, I guess. Bye-bye.